Springs on the Gauteng.
Some of the weapons seized at this house included rocket-propelled grenades, rifles, and even rounds of ammunition.
All military explosives that we found that you cannot obtain a commission.
The weapons found at the house not only had the potential to cause major damage to property, but they also put many lives at risk.
I could have lost any one of my family members, or most of my family members.
Very good morning to you. We are the Newsroom team, of course, as always. Kelo Mahamati is over there, but I'm with Elvis President. Elvis, what car do you drive?
Well, luckily a Jeep, so I'm not driving the Ford Cougar.
Not the Cougar. Yes, that's our focus today. For South Africa, they finally admitted that a fault is causing some of its Cougar SUVs, well, to catch a fire. So, our question of the day today deals with that. It's on screen right there. Has Ford done enough to deal with the Cougar crisis? Now, they have recalled, Davos, more than 4,500 of the vehicles, and they say they're going to deal with it on a case-by-case basis.
It's about time, yeah, Ben, because one person died already in one of the Ford Cougars, and that's over a year ago, and only action is being taken now. So it's a little bit late from Ford.
Yeah, that's a sentiment, a little bit late in the day. Have they done enough now after yesterday's announcements and press conferences and the like? What do you think? We'd love to hear what you think, but we're also running a poll, and that's our theme for today. We're dealing with traditional healers and practices, and traditional healers who abuse people, Elvis.
Now, you know, the Traditional Practitioners Council was set up by Parliament in 2015. That's about a year and a half ago, to regulate traditional health practitioners in the country. But there has not been any registration thus far. So the question that we pose to our viewers out there, should traditional healers and their practices be regulated? That's the question we pose. So far, 124 votes in, 73% are saying yes, this industry should be regulated. 27% are saying no.
Well, we'll also talk about pastors and their role and the like, as we see a lot of dodgy practices in both spaces, both traditional healers and, of course, in the name of religion. We also see some dodgy practices, and we'll talk about that and, well, other news throughout the 3 hours this morning.
Number of role players that we'll have in studio to discuss the issue, so you don't want to miss it. Stay tuned right here on the Newsroom. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to lead a South African delegation on behalf of President Jacob Zuma to the World Economic Forum. The meeting officially kicks off in Davos in Switzerland today. Ford says they will continue to work with the affected customers and deal with each individual case by its merits following an announcement of a voluntary safety recall. And Eskom has served notices on 3 Northern Cape municipalities that their electricity supply will be interrupted as from tomorrow if they do not pay the power utility. Hello, darkness, my friend, in some of those municipalities. But before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. It's not so dark out there, is it?
It's not so dark. Lots to cover, gentlemen. It's been a massive sporting week so far.
Yeah.
Out in Australia and in Gabon, keeping all of us glued to our TV sets. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today. 10 men Leopards of DRC stayed in an upset at AFCON, beating the mighty Atlas Lions of Morocco by a single goal to 0.
The ball in! Oh, it's come off the post and smashed home! Beautifully done in the reaction to find the opener.
Serena Williams brings on the intensity at the Australian Open as she powers over Swiss Belinda Bencic.
I'm prepared to work really hard
I'm still young and fast, and obviously Lewis is going to be a great reference. You know, he's many-time world champion.
For the first time since 2009, Mercedes will have no German driver in their lineup as Finn Valtteri Bottas joins the team to replace Nico Rosberg as Lewis Hamilton's driving partner. Now, all this and more we'll have for you later on in the sports, but it's in about 10:40 or so. But for now, it is Elvis who's got the news for you.
Thank you, Kendall. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to lead a South African delegation on behalf of President Jacob Zuma to the World Economic Forum, which officially kicks off today in Davos in Switzerland. This is our top story. Almost 3,000 government leaders, business leaders, as well as labor representatives will converge under the theme Responsive and Responsible Leadership. The meeting takes place at a time when the economy is facing global headwinds as well as political uncertainty. Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected to address delegates today when he officially opens the four-day meeting. Xi Jinping is the first Chinese president to attend the forum. He is expected to talk about globalization and some of China's concerns around threats made by the US President-elect Donald Trump on the possibility of scrapping some of the trade deals. Some of the delegates expect leaders at the conference to talk about inequality and what can be done to ensure that globalization also benefits the poor. South Africa is expected to use the meeting as an opportunity to position the country as a preferred investment destination. US carmaker Ford has finally admitted that a fault is causing some of its Ford Cougar SUVs to catch fire, and it's formally issued a recall in South Africa. But Ford says that the death of a Ford Cougar driver in 2015 was not linked to the defect. The company announced that it is recalling more than 4,000 Ford Cougars. The recall, which Ford refers to as voluntary, will take place in 2 stages.
The first phase sees the replacement of the affected components in the cooling system, verifying and updating the software and conducting an oil leak check on the cylinder head. The second phase of the recall, which Ford promises to announce in due course, will make the cooling system even more robust and will likely involve further part changes and warning systems. Ford SA CEO Jeff Nemeth says the safety recall will ensure that the cars are perfectly safe to drive.
If there's a situation where they don't feel comfortable in the vehicle, then we'll work with our dealers and work with them and try to come up with a way that satisfies them and gets them into either hopefully a new Ford, because we'd like to keep them in the fold, but try to come up with a solution that they're satisfied with.
But the family of the man who died in 2015 when his Ford Cougar caught fire says Ford has misled the media.
All we find is that they are misleading the media and they're trying to save the face of their brand. If anything, they're digging a deeper hole for themselves to get out of. You know, if I have to look at the South African Police Division in George, Colonel Tonkin and Detective Botwa, who provided exceptional investigative work on my brother's matter, they've managed to uncover in less than 4 weeks what Ford has taken more than 18 months to get to.
Ford needs to take accountability and really try and save, another life. We don't want this to ever happen to anyone.
The National Consumer Commission says it will not take incidents of the sort lightly. Commissioner Ibrahim Mohammed says the safety of the consumer is a priority.
South Africa will not tolerate any products that are inferior quality and that are not safe. And we will not hesitate to order recalls if this does happen again in the future.
Ford says that if any Cougar 1.6 owner sees any indication that the engine may be overheating, they should pull over as soon as it's safe to do so, switch off the engine and ensure that all occupants are safely out of the vehicle. And for safety reasons, the bonnet must not be opened. The emergency services should be called first, but if required, then Ford's roads assistance can be contacted on 0861 150 250. This service is available 24/7. Diabo Seto, SABC News, Pretoria.
Pardon the pun, but it's a hot topic of the last 24 hours, isn't it? We're asking you the question today. Has Ford South Africa done enough to deal with this Cougar debacle that's played out in front of all of our eyes here in South Africa. You guys are tweeting us already because it seems as if we have a lot to say about this. Let's just, on the question of the day that we're asking, our old friend Lachasa comes and says, all I can say is that I'm not happy about what Ford has done. This company should be fined, he says. It's been dragging on. Unati, a regular contributor with us as well, he says, Newsroom, Ford hasn't done enough at all since people complain about these cars, he says. Then Lawrence Bailey comes to us with the following. He says, Newsroom, no. Why does a life have to be taken first for Ford to act? All the people affected by this must be compensated, says Lawrence. Of course, Ford maintains that the life loss has very little to do with the Cougar family. It says they will continue with litigation against the company. So it's an interesting one. We're going to keep an eye on it, and we're going to keep going back to keep you updated how the story develops. But, of course, there's a lot more news to be had. Let's go over to Davos for more.
Thank you, Urban. And, of course, it is a burning issue, as you know, with the Ford Cougar. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel, or is there, for Eskom, that has served notices on 3 Northern Cape municipalities that their electricity supply will be interrupted as from tomorrow if they do not pay the power utility. Eskom says it will cut electricity supply for about 4.5 hours a day during the week and 5.5 hours during the weekend. Meanwhile, the Ventersdorp and Tlokwe municipalities have adopted a payment plan to Eskom in a bid to avoid power cuts. The amalgamated municipalities have already paid 28 million of the 62 million rand owed. Eskom cut off power for 2 hours at Mamusa and Naledi municipalities in the northwest yesterday. Eskom says it will continue with its actions against municipalities that fail to adhere to the deadline. Speaking earlier on Morning Live, the power utility spokesperson said he's confident that municipalities will be able to meet their obligations to pay.
We are now comfortable with the arrangements that have been made by the provincial governments in the Free State and part of Northwest. We will see as to how Mpumalanga pans out, but they still have a few more days to go, which is on the 23rd of January this year.
But then when we zoom a little bit into the Northern Cape, talk to us, because we are reading on the bulletin that they will be experiencing power cuts for like 4 hours weekdays, 5.5 hours during the weekends.
Essentially, in the Northern Province, Northern Cape, we have 2 municipalities there. We had given them until tomorrow, the 18th, to make arrangements with us as to how they're going to pay or make the actual payments. But if they don't, if they fail to make any payments, then unfortunately from 6 o'clock in the morning we will interrupt their power supply. So in a 24-hour cycle, we will only interrupt their power supply for 4 hours. So in other words, they'll have power for 20 hours, but for 4 hours from 6 until 8 in the morning, and then late in the afternoon from 5 o'clock until 7:30, we will interrupt their power supply if they do not pay. So it is very unfair indeed to customers and industries in those particular provinces that are paying regularly, but unfortunately when you have a situation like now in Vryburg where they do not have electricity, it's very unfair. But from our side, and this was also made very clear by the court, by the way, about 2 weeks ago, AfriForum had taken Eskom to court, and the court made it very clear that people in those provinces, if they have any qualms with the power interruptions, they don't have to vent their frustrations on Eskom, because Eskom has a direct contract with municipalities, and municipalities are the ones that are failing their customers, and therefore customers have to take their frustrations to municipalities. So we're hopeful, though, that even in a place like Vryburg, there will be some resolution. Today, during the course of the day, we are scheduled to have a meeting in Mafikeng with the provincial government together with the local municipality in Vryburg and Stella, and we are hopeful that by the end of today we should have a resolution.
Now, the Burundian woman, whom Defense Minister Nosovio Mapisa-Nqakula is accused of smuggling into the country, has broken her silence. In an exclusive interview with the SABC, Michelle Wege insists that Mapisa-Nqakula's 2013 involvement is getting her out of the DRC and into South Africa was legal and above board. Mapisa-Nqakula used an Air Force flight to bring Wege into the country, something she has publicly said she doesn't regret. However, Wege, who now lives with the minister, admits that she fraudulently got into the DRC fleeing away from her father in Burundi, whom she accused of abuse. The person who helped her get into the DRC is a South African embassy staff member in Burundi. He has now been fired and fighting his dismissal.
As she was trying to do all of that, Abdul was her translator. And he came to me after saying, I've been hearing her trying to go to all of these embassies, trying to find a way for you to go out. I believe I have a way, and I want to help you. And I told him, listen, I've already decided that I'm going to have to get an illegal document to travel. I already know this. And I'd rather not have anyone else, even though I'm prepared to get caught, because I know that it's safer for me in a foreign prison than to be with my father, because I know, besides just the abuse, this was the first time that he had gone further, as in treating me the way he would treat any other business partner, or he's a vicious person in that, you know, in that business and political sense. To me, he's been my father, yes, with abuse, but I've always still felt like I'm his child. It has never been a property or a whatever is going on. But that was the first time where he would even have policemen coming after me, goons coming after me, threatening the lives of people to get to me. So yeah, either way, I told Abdul, I don't want you to be in that position, because if I get caught, you get caught. And you have a family and so on, so I don't know what will happen. But he looked at me and said, no, you are like my child. If my child would have any issues this deep, I would want someone to help them. You are like my child. There's no way that this is happening and I can just stand by and not do anything. And so he did help me. I crossed through other contacts. That is in a report for whoever needs to see that, whoever has the authority to see that as they do the investigation. I'm not going to mention their names, as I don't think the public should know that. But I crossed the border, and as I arrived there, he helped me with my new documents.
How did you cross the border?
In a car, hiding. I was hiding in the car. But I had another ID that I had organized. So we crossed the border. He said, don't worry, I will handle this. He did somehow get the papers. We got to the airport, and then obviously we got caught. And then, so we told the story as we were there. We said, okay, this is what's happening, X, Y, and Z. I'm not sure how long it took before we told them, but we waited until it was like a official person, because at the same time, where I was coming from was that my dad could have any goons anywhere, and it's easier to pay off the lower level. It's very, very easy to do that. I'd rather have an official, so I can say anywhere on the record that I told this person, X, Y, and Z. So yeah, I guess they didn't believe us. They put us in it's not a prison, it's a holding cell type, yes, there we go, type thing. We were there for about a week. Abdul was there with me, and he was watching over me, basically, and his family came through with food for us and so on and so forth. And I think after a week of being there, I got a call that Mom was flying through, but that she still wasn't sure. It didn't mean anything that she could help me or not, but she was going to ask them why they were not listening to my story, because I was telling them the truth. So she thought, okay, let me tell them again about what's happening, and I want to understand exactly what it is. Why are they not releasing you, and what exactly are you being what is going on? Because we were in the cell not knowing anything. It will be one day, okay, we think you're hiding diamonds in your stomach. We hear this information that you are a diamond smuggler. And then the next day you have drugs, you're hiding drugs, and so on and so forth. And it got so bad they had a schedule to cut my dreads off to find these diamonds or drugs that I apparently had in my dreads. So she was, I think, trying to find out where these stories are coming from and why, how, what could we do to move forward. Then they brought me out of the cell to sit there and talk again. And as we were sitting there talking, it was as if oh, that is your name? Oh, you were abused? As if this was a new thing that was coming out, but it wasn't. Like I had been saying this story, this is what is happening to me. But again, I don't know, either way. So I was there, and eventually they said, okay, well, then you can go. And they had told me before that her coming there might not mean that I can get out. And even if I get out, doesn't mean that I'm going anywhere with her. I was thinking that, okay, if I can get out, now where to move from here. My dad probably has heard, now that I'm in Congo, now I have to properly go underground and hide again. That's where I was going. But either way, so I got out, and they said that I could go with them. And from what I found out later, she did get permission to do that. So yeah, got out, and they brought me here after she did what she was supposed to do, because she was there on her own mission for work. So yeah.
That interview was done by our colleague Aldrin St-Pierre. There's a longer version we'll make available on all of our platforms here at SABC for you to look at. But that was the extended version of that interview. Of course, today we're dealing specifically with traditional healers and some of the controversies they've been involved in over the last little bit. So we asked the question to you on our poll today. Should traditional healers and their practices be regulated? Should they be accountable for what they do? We've seen some traditional healers go as far as to rape some victims, telling them that sperm will cure all illnesses and disease. What do you think about that? Now, we've got 136 of you voting. 74% say yes, they should be regulated completely. Of course, the bill is in the offing. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But Lechasa comes in. Oops, we've lost Lechasa. Yeah, he's back. He says, big yes, traditional healers should be regulated. You should not be able to lead our people down the garden path. That one from Lechasa. Unati comes and he says, if they can do that in churches, why not? Then my answer is yes. Yes, pastors should be regulated. We'll also talk to the CRL a little bit later about both instances, really, because there's now a breakthrough pastor that has emerged. Can you imagine that? Limo Mashi says, Newsroom, you can't regulate what you don't know. Yes, but you can regulate when you break the law, Limo, can't you? Don't you agree with that? Kumkani says, people want it regulated because they're curious of its operations, he says. That's a different take on it. An interesting one from Kumkani. And he comes back, he says, before regulating it, incorporate the practice within the mainstream healthcare, he says. That's an interesting take. I'll talk to, we'll talk to the National Traditional Healers Organization shortly to get a view on that. Many people in South Africa believe in the practice wholeheartedly. Therefore, incorporate it and then regulate it. It's fair, he says. Interesting views. That's very nice to see, isn't it? Now, shortly we'll talk to the National Traditional Healers Organization here in South Africa after the break about that. I like that comment. Why don't we make it mainstream and then regulate it? But before we get there, let's just do a little bit of housekeeping. First, we're going to take a look at where we're at on social media right now. Of course, the fires are, causing mayhem in Cape Town, and the hashtag is Cape Town fires. This time a fire broke out in Vredehoek, the Deer Park fires. That's what they say. Here's just one image from ER24. We arrived promptly on the scene before this house was destroyed. Then residents are thanking their firefighters for working hard throughout the night to keep the blaze under control. Matt Lee Hing says, firefighters are the true champs. Thanks to all the emergency crews for all of their hard work. Matt Lee Hing, thank you for calling it. Yes, they did a great job overnight. Beyond follows on and says, sounds like I woke up in the Vietnam War with all the choppers. Hoo-wee, I love the fresh smell of water bombs in the morning. A little bit of irony there from Bjorn Steinbach. And then that follows up by that picture of a helicopter flying right over the city center. Kind of looks a little bit like a war zone, if you ask me. Interesting picture. Of course, from one fire to another, the Ford Cougar is all the talk today after the motor company recalled the faulty model. That's after 43 cars went up in flames and a man died. Please do get your car checked if you drive one of these models. This image comes from the Global Disaster Fund, who are having a little bit of a laugh. It's captioned, when I charged my Samsung Note 7 in a Ford Cougar. That is what happened. Wonderful piece of humor there. I'm sure the companies involved don't find it that funny. Anyhow, People also talking about some of the discussions that came out of the UN Data Forum that's being held in Cape Town. Of course, the first of its kind. It's being hosted in Cape Town here in South Africa. The conference is expected to continue today and the rest of the week. Hopefully we'll get an update from there a little bit later to, well, tell us what's happening then. In some sports news, people are showing their love and support, of course, for the AFCON 2017. Ivory Coast and Togo, they drew 0-0 yesterday. Whereas the DRC, yes, the Minnows, they beat, well, the Giants of Morocco by a single goal to 0. We'll talk to Kendall a little bit later about the fact that so few goals are being scored in the AFCON 27 championships. Why? I wonder why. Is it maybe a little bit of a cagey start because there's so much to play for? Anyhow, let's take a look at a picture from the day. This one comes from Tyler Golato, and it's captioned, "The latest in a series of fires to hit Table Mountain and the surrounds." This time, Deer Park, you see it is engulfed, and the fire is moving down towards Frederhoek, hoping everyone is okay, he says. We certainly do. Now, for our comment of the day. Yeah, everyone has had a comment on this one, but this one was particularly poignant on to the heart of the matter. Nicholas Bauer, the hashtag Fort Cougar, who says, so Fort South Africa must, capital letters must, why, mind you, must explain why did it take 43 burnouts and the death of a motorist for them to take action. I think that's a question, a fair question, and it's a question that, well, they'll have to answer. They call this recall a voluntary recall. Of course, that's our question of the day as well. We ask you that same question. Have they done enough? Have they done enough in this instance? Have they done enough to deal with the Cougar crisis? And are you happy with the outcomes? And what do you think about the families that have lost loved ones and so forth and so forth? Of course, that litigation will continue. That's according to the family. They're not very happy with the way that Ford has responded, and they say they'll continue to, well, they'll see Ford in court, as it were. While we're talking about the court, well, let's see what's happening in the courts around the country. A little wrap-up. We'll start in Durban, where a man is expected to plead guilty to a racist rant, yes, another one, that he posted on his Facebook page that related to the use of fireworks around the Hindu festival Diwali last month. The ANC and the DA in the province laid criminal injuria charges against David Krill shortly after his outburst. Krill is expected to appear in the Durban Magistrates Court. Then, down in Cape Town, 3 family members arrested in connection with a huge arms bust in Valhalla Park on the Cape Flats late last year. They due back in court today. They were each granted 20,000 rand bail with strict conditions in the Goodwood Magistrates Court. The 3 are facing charges of illegally possessing firearms and ammunition. Charges against 2 other people were withdrawn due to a lack of evidence. The 3 suspects are a father, a son, and a daughter. About 250 weapons were dug out of their Lydia Street home last December. It's suspected that they have gang connections. We'll see what comes out of the court case. An interesting one. So many weapons doing the rounds on the Cape Flats as it is, and so many lives being lost on the Cape Flats in gang violence as it is. Communities being held ransom on the Cape Flats as it is. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll speak to the National Traditional Healers Organization, well, about the furore that's going around traditional healing right now. Don't go away.
Provide news updates giving a wealth of knowledge, breaking stories and crossing live for you. We follow business developments intensely. Experts and analysts tackle all challenging issues for you. We cover stories locally and abroad to keep you informed. We cover all sporting codes just for you. We are sure to give you weather to be ready for the day. Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News, Channel 404 on the DSTV. Okay, now, the Traditional Healers Organization has condemned the actions of a Limpopo-based traditional healer who allegedly raped a 16-year-old from Ga Marishane. It is believed that the incident took place when the victim went for consultation at the Sangoma's home earlier this month. She was given traditional medicine by this healer to drink and subsequently became dizzy. The suspect took her to a room where he raped her. Now, to talk about this and the framework that surrounds traditional healers' work here in South Africa, well, we joined by Pepsile Maseko, who is the National Coordinator for the Traditional Healers Organization here in South Africa. Good morning to you, my dear. How are you today?
How are you?
Very, very good. Now, this incident, unfortunately, it always puts the traditional healers' practice in a bad light, this kind of incident. But are you happy that these kinds of incidents are not out of control in South Africa?
You know, it's so unfortunate that regardless of the amount of work that the THO continues to do in terms of education, creating awareness, you know, there's still, snippets of such incidences happening. And the unfortunate thing is that they always prey on people that are vulnerable, like this incident of a 16-year-old child. Yeah, so it's not a nice thing to happen.
How do you, as the THO, deal with this kind of incident when you come across it?
In fact, before we even go to ask that question, to respond to the question, the one thing that is preoccupying us is, where are the parents of this child? Because according to traditional health practice, there is no way that a child as young as that could alone go and approach a practitioner. So, I mean, we're not hearing parents featuring in anywhere there.
Yeah.
So we do not understand exactly what's happening. But then in most cases, what has to happen is that we need to make sure that children like that, who are minors, should be accompanied by elderly people who are either guardians or parents to the child. So there's no way that a child as young as that, could go to a practitioner.
The legal age to see a practitioner is 16.
No, not in our case. If you have to go unaccompanied, it would have to at least around 24, 25 years.
Is that
unaccompanied? Yes.
Unaccompanied. So when you're younger than that, you have to go with a supervising adult.
Exactly.
As it were.
Yes, but then if you have to go there for initiation purposes, there's no way that you can go there alone, whether old or young.
So you say that the parents of the young people especially have a massive responsibility in making sure that nothing untoward happens to the child.
No, there should be nothing that happens untoward. And that's why we always say to listeners, we always say to viewers of this program and other programs, to say if they happen to need any sort of expertise, traditional health expertise, they always have to approach the THO. Because, I mean, we are an organization that is well over 45 years in existence, and we've got all the experience and a good understanding of how to take care of yourself in this profession.
Now, in 2015, of course, the Traditional Health Practitioners Act 22 of 2007, it caused quite a stir amongst traditional healers. Do you think there should be better regulation of traditional practitioners here in South Africa? And I'm talking to you with your THO hat on now.
I mean, firstly, we are one of the leading organizations in the country that has always advocated for regulations. We support the viewers who said there is need for regulation. We confirm that it's important that we get regulated. In fact, every profession has to be regulated. But then it is very wrong for government to want a profession, whatever the kind of profession, to be regulated outside of their own people. If it has to be regulated, it should be healers themselves that are leading in the regulations, that would develop the regulations. It can't be a Western medical practitioner that tells us how we should regulate. Like the other commenter said, that it shouldn't be done by other people that do not know how we practice. Instead, because we know all the flaws, we know all the challenges.
One of the other comments said, I think it came from a gentleman called Kumkani or something like that. He said it should be incorporated as part of mainstream medicine, and then to be regulated as such, not as Western medicine, but within its own framework, but it should be given official status. What do you say to that?
Of course, we do concur with that. Remember in 2010,
There we go. This is the comment that I want. I think it's the next one from Kumkani. Can we see the next one? Yeah? Okay, we've missed it, unfortunately. But if you... Yeah.
Remember in 2010, all ministers from different countries in Africa, they came together in Zambia to adopt what you'd call, to declare from 2010 until 2001 until 2010 as a decade for traditional medicine. In all of those things, one of the things that they resolved on was that traditional medicine should be mainstreamed, like any other healthcare system, like other sister sciences, you know. And they said also it was important that healers from different countries should be regulated. They should also be allowed space to practice. People should have the right to the freedom to choose any practitioner of choice. So all of those things, the THO has always been behind that. We continue to support all of that.
Why do you think
that has backdated for a long time?
Why do you think there's always, or there's still suspicion about traditional healers' practices, and it's not been mainstream? Here in South Africa, we've done some research, and it says up to 70% of adults in South Africa, they go and see a traditional practitioner at least once a year.
Yeah, 72%.
So it should be mainstream, shouldn't it?
It should be mainstream, but then the thing is, medicine is politics, The big pharma doesn't want to see traditional medicine thrive. It's all politics, and it's so unfortunate that our governments in all the different countries, are always listening and sitting in pockets of pharma. So that's the unfortunate part. But we need to be regulated. We need to be given a good space to work from, and we need to be mainstreamed like any other health profession.
Final question to you then, just to wrap. Your engagements with government as the THO, has it been fruitful until now, or would you like to see it improve?
Surely we should see a lot of improvements, more so because people are beginning to realize and appreciate the importance of natural and indigenous medicines and healthcare practice. So we'd like to see a lot of developments in this area.
Pepsile, thank you for coming in today. Wonderful to talk to you. Interesting topic it is, something that I'm personally very interested in. That's Pepsile Maseku. She's the National Coordinator of the Traditional Healers Organization here in South Africa. Of course, we've been asking you the question today. Let's just have a look. No, that's not the question. We've been a poll rather. We've been running a poll. A poll that we've been running is that should traditional healers and their practices, should it be regulated? Now, 3/4 of you are saying yes, regulated. I say go even further. Bring it into mainstream medicine. Bring it into mainstream medicine, because so many people, 7 out of 10 adults, more than 7 out of 10 adults in South Africa, they go and see a traditional practitioner every year. That numbers are even bigger than those who go and see a doctor. Let's take a look on the comments on this poll. What are you guys saying with regards to this question? Of course, it's an emotive one, something that everyone has a view on. Extrovert, he says, yes, they should be regulated, but they must cooperate with the Department of Health. Hashtag Sangoma, he says. You've just heard Pepsile say they do cooperate. Lechasa comes back, big yes. Traditional healers should be regulated. For sure, Nzansi. Unati comes, he says, if they can do that in churches, why not them? Why not them as well? He says, my answer then is yes. Talking about Sangomas, traditional healers, Nyanga, then the CRL. Of course, we'll speak to the CRL a little bit later. Elvis is setting up to get their views on it. Limo Machi says, you can't regulate what you don't know. Limo, you can't break the law as well. We have a constitution. People have rights. Kumkani says, people want it regulated because they're curious of its operations. Yes, interesting one. Interesting one indeed. Yes. If you don't know it, then you should get to know it. I think I should go and see a traditional practitioner at some point. Now, let's take a look at the front pages from around the globe as we move on. We'll start in Australia. The Daily Telegraph reports that gutless greenies are threatening lives by destroying shark nets of Sydney's most iconic beaches, exposing swimmers to man-eaters stalking the Australian coast. Who would be so crazy? Anyhow, we live in that time, I suppose. Moving to China, the South China Morning Post says the upcoming race for Hong Kong's top job has lost its shape due to the increasing interference of an invisible hand. This, according to the New People's Party Deputy Chairperson Michael Teen Puxon. Then, finally, in the US, the Miami Herald reports that a day of celebration was marred when 8 people were shot and several others injured during a stampede to get out of Miami-Dade's Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Park on a day when the civil rights icon was honored across the country. We couldn't put it up. We apologize. But it's a sad story, isn't it? We're going to take a short commercial break. Now, when we come back, we'll continue the discussion around traditional healers' practice with the CRL. So, don't go away.
It was bound to be an interesting debate with Donald and Hillary, him not even having bothered to prepare. So he was flying on instinct. And it didn't come across quite well. I'm starting a hashtag, medical fees must fall. There are many students who are protesting who are not necessarily violent. The students are saying the issue is how to implement, whereas the Commission's mandate is to look at feasibility.
Yeah. Among these countries, only South Africa allows same-sex marriages. Very concerning indeed, Prof.
Your sexual orientation does not demean your own humanity, doesn't make you less of a human being. That really is the essence.
Police found powerful military explosives when they swooped on a house in Springs on the Gauteng.
Some of the weapons seized at this house included rocket-propelled grenades, rifles, and even rounds of ammunition.
All military explosives that we found that you cannot obtain a commission.
The weapons found at the house not only had the potential to cause major damage to property, but they also put many lives at risk.
I could have lost any one of my family members, or most of my family members.
Now, we'd like to apologize. The CRL is unfortunately running a little bit late because we were supposed to speak to them in relation to the abuses being suffered by some of the victims by the traditional healers, as well as, of course, an update of the report that they're busy with. There's an interim report out. We'd like to also get a sense of what is happening there. But as soon as the CRL is here, that's the chairperson, we'll bring her in to talk to us about that. But another story now. Last year, thousands of women from as far as the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Seychelles descend on Gallagher Estate in Midrand. Now, they were there for the Alleluia Ministry's international pastor, Alf Lukau's 90-day marriage miracle countdown. And it was themed, Wholeness for Greatness. The church was criticized, though, for charging 5,000 Rand entry fee for those seeking marriage, having problems in their relationships, or battling to conceive. Now, from the Alleluia Ministries, we are joined in studio here by Busisiwe Gaka, as well as Pastor Rochelle Combo. A very good morning to both of you and welcome.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you.
First and foremost, I would like you to respond to the criticism of the 5,000 Rand being charged for women that participated in this particular countdown. And why was that charged to women that came to see the pastor?
Okay, I'll take that. First of all, let me clarify that the tickets were not 5,000 Rand. They ranged from 450 Rand to 5,000 Rand. So let us not focus on only the one price tag.
Why the difference in the price points?
It has, when you're hosting a whole lot of people, you're going to have people that are sitting right at the back where probably visuals might be compromised because everyone is right there at the back. That could have contributed to the difference in price points. So as a matter of fact, 75% of the women that attended the event paid 450. 20% of them paid the 1,500 rand, and only 5% paid the 5 grand. It's actually amazing that our focal point is always the 5 grand.
So 5% paid 5 grand, and those are the women that are looking for marriage.
Even that is factually incorrect, because this was a women's event that was not only looking at women who are looking for marriage. There were 4 focal areas: single women who are trusting God for marriage, married women who believe that their marriage is going through turbulent times, asking God for restoration of their marriage, sick women. As we know statistically, there's a whole lot of diseases that affect more women than men, and women who were seeking financial breakthrough so that we can finance the kingdom of God. Those were the 4 focal points, not only marriage.
But I'm going to focus, unfortunately, on that 5%.
That's fine.
Because it is important. Why are women then being either targeted and promised this 90-day marriage miracle?
Okay, can I speak for that? My pastor, Pastor Alf Lukau, is a prophetic man, and he hears directly from God. Now, whether people agree with that or not, that is up to the Lord. And my pastor got an instruction that during our women's conference, which every church holds at that time of the year, that is what he should do. That he should prophesy over the women of the nations that within 90 days, this and this and this will take place. As Sister Busi has mentioned, there were 4 different focal areas. So under the prophetic instruction of the Holy Spirit, he made that declaration. People need to understand that you receive what God has given us by faith. That 5% that responded with their 5,000 rands did that in faith. They were not forced, they were not cajoled, they were not manipulated, and they were not in any way forced to do anything. They did it out of faith, believing that when I buy this particular ticket, I want to sit in the front, perhaps, and I want to be the first one to receive directly from the Lord.
Eben?
Pastor, I've got a question, because there are many people today that claim that God speaks to them. Actually, I think there are more people today that claim that God speaks to them than ever before in the history. How does God speak to the pastor today? Do we ever know? Is it by SMS, cell phone? How does he speak to you?
God has always spoken through the ages. Even before now, he has always spoken. And the Bible says, God speaks, but we perceive him not. My pastor receives instruction from the Lord in different ways. There are many times when he has told us that angels have appeared to him and have told him, do this and do that. There are times when he has dreams. There are times when he has visions. Amen? So in other words, God speaks in any way. Even you can hear from God yourself if you're willing to listen. My pastor spends a copious amount of time in the presence of God, praying and seeking the face of God. And this is the reason why he has the confidence to come out and to announce on national television, even international television, the instruction that God has given him.
Now, Pastor, I just want to stick with that. How many women were prayed, that 5% that we pray for, and even before that, historically, how many women got married from this miracle intervention?
Wow. Busi, I think you should take that because she's got the stats.
All right. So from that, we need to bear in mind that most of the women that attended the event did not come from Alleluia Ministries International. So as a matter of fact, we didn't follow them, right? So, but within AMI, to date, we've had about 96 marriages.
And that's over how many years now?
No. So
just from the period.
Just from the 9th of September until the 9th of December. We've had over 200 engagements, people proposing to each other. We've had over 2,000 new relationships that started within that period. We've had people who renewed their vows.
All right. Now, last week we spoke to a journalist, Solomon Zassoms. He was in our studio, and he said that this is nothing but a scam. He's joining us now on the line to tell us more about that. Solomon, a very good morning to you and welcome. Can you hear me? And can you tell us, what do you make of this particular, you heard what the pastor has indicated about the miracle intervention?
Yes, I heard quite a bit of it. Good morning to everyone there. I just want to first say that this is totally not about Pastor Alf. It's not about any individual. This is about biblical principles that a lot of people like me feel that is not being applied appropriately. Feeling that a lot of it is mismanaged, distorted in so many ways. And that's what we're speaking about. This is not a fight in any way. But this is looking at principles that are applied from a leadership like Pastor Al, from a biblical perspective, and talking about the marriages, the marriage issue and the praying for women to get married. I felt it is a case of pure commercialization of Christianity. I would want to look at it from a biblical perspective and also look at it maybe from a commercial perspective. If you charge, how many women were there? How much did they pay? People are saying, well, you have to charge them because there's a venue. We know that the Bible says that, the gifts and callings of God are without repentance. So he has a calling. Yes, that is this. And I heard, I think, Zibusi also talking about, there's pastors spending a lot of time in the presence of God and hearing from God as instructions. I hear from God. Everybody hears from God. Like even was saying earlier, now we had so many people saying that, they hear from God, and it's a bit confusing. And we all hear from God. A pastor, for me, is not different from somebody sitting in the pew. But sometimes the pastors hear from God and tell the congregation, and they take it with no hesitation. But the pastor can be in error. The pastor can make mistakes. But claiming exclusively that is from God, and then you have innocent people sitting in the crowd and saying, no, they're going to just run with it because this is thou says the Lord. And sometimes, actually, the pastor forces whatever he hears from God, be it true or not, on people, manipulates people with it. We've seen quite a lot of it. One of the guests there mentioned the issue of there's about 96 marriages already since that prayer meeting, But we have to look at the marriages. Honestly, can we bring all the marriage certificate and put it on the table right there in the studio? Can we look at every marriage that happened? Was it a fresh marriage? A lot of them were renewal of vows. A lot of them were people living together and who were asked to go ahead and, and get married. Yes, there were fresh marriages, but how many of them were fresh marriages were single women who exclusively didn't have a relationship, Solomon, but after the prayer they had this.
Solomon, it's Eben speaking here. I want to know about these pictures. Can you see the pictures that have been put up? Did you put these pictures up, or who put these pictures up of you?
That's definitely not my pictures. There's been a huge social media campaign against me from the social media desk of Hallelujah Ministries International, where they've been saying I'm a Muslim, that I've been against pastors like Chris Oyakilome, T.D. Jakes, going to my history from where I came up, and a lot of things that are totally not factual, taking my photos and photoshopping and claiming that I have been asking for forgiveness, But this is not about it. There's quite a lot of it that has gone viral and totally it has in some way discredit me, and I wonder why that should be done.
Pastor, do you refute the allegations that you just heard from the journalist there, that he was intimidated because there was bodyguards even sent to his house to go and harass him?
Yes, we do refute those allegations merely because whoever went to his house was not under the instruction of the church, of the Executive Council. Everything that Solomon is saying is not factual at all. We refute them, we refuse them, and we rebuke them in the name of Jesus, because of the fact that he is an outsider. I have been in the church for the past 10 years, and we are the only ones that can really speak on behalf of the church because we are connected. We are connected in many different ways, spiritually, administratively. We have records. We have tangible records that anybody is free to come and have a look at to actually see how many marriages have been recorded, how many renewal of vows, and all of those kind of things. As for intimidation tactics, we are children of God. That's our #1 treasure at Hallelujah Ministries.
What about the social media attacks then? Because it comes from your official accounts.
People do things out of their own willingness to do them. Hallelujah Ministries is a gigantic organization, a gigantic movement all over the world.
But surely if I have something on my personal Facebook account, then I can't refute them. I can't say, oh no, it's not in my name. So at some point we have to take responsibility.
But do you know how many fake AMI accounts we have? People are always trying to defraud us in some way or the other. There are so many. From an official AMI perspective, that is not us.
We'll leave it there. I just wanted to ask you, in my personal capacity, do women still need to be married? Do they have to be married in order to achieve your life? Do you have to be married as a woman?
According to the Word of God, absolutely yes.
Where in the Scripture is that?
Well, I cannot say exactly right now which exact Scripture, but it is in the Word of God.
I've never come across it in the Scripture that women have to be married. Maybe you can send it to me via social media.
Yes, I'll do that.
I just want to then finalize this conversation. Do you condemn, though, these attacks, whether it is on social media, whether it is fake, against the journalist that is writing about the pastor?
Absolutely.
So nobody should be attacked. Nobody should be intimidated. Whether it is the journalist intimidating the church or the other way around, nobody should be. We all have an opportunity to talk to each other, to approach each other and be civil with each other. So if there's any attacks on him, we condemn that in the same way that we condemn the attacks that he has towards the church.
Are you willing to engage with the journalist in terms of the discrepancies that you have alluded to?
Why not? Of course. Our doors are open. If he stopped blocking us, for an example, I mean, I can't even talk to him via Facebook. He blocked me straight up. My doors are there. I'm there. I can speak to him.
Just in closing, Solomon, what do you make of that? And are you willing to engage with the church in order to sort out this and not to be intimidated further?
Definitely. Ready to come to a compromise. Like I said, it's not a fight against anyone. I blocked people off my Facebook page because I told them not to insult or abuse anyone. So anyone I blocked, if you go to my Facebook page, there's a lot of people that are saying stuff that is very offensive. I still leave it there. But some people went the extra mile. That's why I blocked her. And I'm ready to engage with anyone. I'm ready to look at it. People need to take responsibility. There's been an orchestrated plan. I've had WhatsApp messages, I've seen the screenshots, and I know how they spread across social media. They're not taking responsibility for the threat and intimidation of my wife coming to my house after the chief bodyguard of the pastor spoke to me on a Thursday. The Friday, phone calls started coming from private numbers, from members of their church in Namibia and Zambia, intimidating us, but they're not still ready to take responsibility. But you see, this is just a case of sitting down and saying, okay, here is it. We're Christians, and we should sit down and talk about things. Yes. This is not a fight. This is about the Bible. If we can sit down factually and look at the Bible, that's just it. But then we have to really look at these issues and talk about it, because there's quite a lot that's happening within the Christian community in South Africa that is not just right. Solomon, and no church is perfect. I understand that. I'm not perfect myself. Solomon, I might have made a mistake, in the course of my,
Solomon,
covering this issue. I want to apologize for that and all that. But we have to sit down and really take responsibility.
Solomon, thank you so much for your time. Unfortunately, we're running out of time here. Thank you so much for your time joining us. That was the journalist Solomon Zashoms joining us, as well as Busisiwe Gaka and Pastor Rochelle Combo here in studio. Thank you so much for joining me and getting some clarity to the issues. There's a lot more to discuss, because there's also the issue of the rich lifestyle of the pastor, which I would like to discuss, but unfortunately we no longer have time. So thank you so much for your time. That is where we end it for now. On the Newsroom, we'll be back at the top of the hour. You don't want to go away. You don't want to miss anything. Stay tuned.
If I knew he was going to be on the line.
No, we didn't know. We were trying to get hold of him the whole time.
Waterwise, Water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 4:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
So people with prosthesis can live normal life.
Prosthesis actually manufactures the artificial limbs.
I can pick up stuff. My friends think it's awesome. I like my real life.
I can walk normally. There's nothing that I can do. It changed my life from the beginning to where I am now.
Dystrophic dysplasia is a type of dwarfism that affected all my major limbs.
Join Health Talk every Saturday for all your health news.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom. What a firecracker of a show we're having this morning. I've asked Elvis to stick around because that was a very interesting interview, wasn't it?
Very interesting. And unfortunately, there was not much time to discuss all the other issues that we still need to discuss. But we'll call back the church as well as maybe the pastor perhaps next time to join us. We believe that he was in prayer, so he couldn't join us. But maybe next time he will join us personally to discuss these issues.
He was in prayer. I find that a little bit weird. I like the question you asked about the lifestyle in the Ferrari. We were told shortly that the pastor only stood next to a friend's Ferrari and took a picture of that, and we can't hold him accountable for that. But it's a story that I think is going to have its own life over the next couple of weeks, and we'll continue following it. We know you guys are passionate about it. Of course, one of our contributors, Solomon Izanga Shoms, he's got a lot of different angles on it, so Elvis, we'll definitely follow up on it.
But talking about cars, there's a burning issue here. The Ford Cougar, Ford South Africa, has finally admitted that a fault is causing some of its Ford Cougar SUVs to catch fire and recalled more than 4,000 Ford Cougars here in South Africa. So we're asking that question.
Yeah, on screen. Has Ford done enough to deal with the burning issue, or this hot topic, as Elvis called it? This is the Cougar crisis. Of course, 43 of them have caught fire, very much like the one there on screen. One gentleman who lost his life. Ford is saying no, it's got nothing to do with their cars and so forth. But what are the people saying?
Well, Ford, there it says, there gives you the logo, faults overall, what they call it, I think it's repairs daily. There you have it.
No, do we have tweets? Are you guys tweeting us? We don't have any tweets. We'll get some new tweets just now and we'll put them up. But we're also running this poll, of course, as we spoke to the Traditional Healers Organisation of South Africa. I was a little bit perturbed that the CRL they didn't pitch, or if they are a little bit late, hopefully we can get some input from them on this. Okay, so they're not coming, says my producer in my ear. Thank you very much, Nico. 162 votes in, 73% say yes, just regulate them. I say go even further, bring them into mainstream medicine, because 72% of South Africans, black South Africans that is, that means 7.2 out of 10 people actually go and see a traditional healer every year.
So they must be mainstream, because
absolutely,
they got the biggest
has to be. Yeah. I'm Jesse, says Newsroom. It has been discussed for many years that traditional healers should be working with other medical practices. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you for that contribution.
She continues, and she says they should have been regulated by now. Remember 2015? That was the date that was set. Up until now, that has not been done as yet, Jesse.
Extrovert says yes, they should be regulated, that they must cooperate with the Department of Health. It talks about the hashtag Sangoma there. Of course, the THO, they tell us they are in discussions with the Department of Health with regards to this. Let's hope that the bill sees the light and that we live through the bill.
Now, those are all the comments that we have available for you, but before we go any further, let's take a look at your news headlines. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to lead a South African delegation on behalf of President Jacob Zuma to the World Economic Forum. The meeting officially kicks off in Davos in Switzerland today. Ford says that they will continue to work with the affected customers and deal with each individual case by its merits, following an announcement of a voluntary safety recall. And AFCON has served notices on 3 Northern Cape municipalities that their electricity supply will be interrupted as from tomorrow if they do not pay the power utility. Those are all your headlines. Before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. It's not a burning issue there, is it, Kendall?
There actually are a lot of burning issues.
There are lots of burning issues, but I'm interested on a personal level. You watched the interview that Elvis led so beautifully now with the Hallelujah Ministries and the like. What did you make of that little exchange we had? Yeah, I thought it was very good television. What do you make?
Absolutely, it was. In fact, we had the entire newsroom riveted to all of our TVs watching this interaction. There are a lot of opposing views to what was being said, but there are 1 or 2 murmurs that were sort of in agreement with what the ladies were saying. So it goes to show that the church has got a leadership and the church has got a followership, as well as there are a whole lot of other people that think slightly differently outside. So definitely good television, gentlemen.
Amen, brother. Amen, brother. And we will follow up. That's our duty. We will follow up for all of you on that very matter. But let's go to the sport now with Kendall.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you very much, Eben. Thank you very much, Elvis. Very interesting discussions we're having right here on Newsroom. Tell you what, first up, let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the sports world. 10-man Leopards of DRC staged an upset at AFCON, beating the mighty Atlas Lions of Morocco by a single goal to 0.
The ball in! Oh, it's come off the post and smashed home! Beautifully done in the reaction to find the opener.
Serena Williams brings on the intensity at the Australian Open as she powers over Swiss Belinda Bencic.
And that's that. It was a tough opening round for Serena Williams, up against the player that had beaten her before.
I'm prepared to work really hard. I'm still young and fast, and obviously Lewis is going to be a great reference. You know, he's many-time world champion.
For the first time since 2009, Mercedes will have no German driver in their lineup as Finn Valtteri Bottas joins the team to replace Nico Rosberg as Lewis Hamilton's driving partner. Now, all this and more I've got for you later on in the Sports Bulletin about 10:40. But for now, it is Eben who's got the news for you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kendall. Well, we've got a sensational development happening. Of course, our story of the day, of course, is the Ford Cougar story. And I can tell you the family of Rachel Jimmy, who was killed in a Ford Cougar 1.6 when it went up in flames. They say they still intend to take action against the family. Let's go live to the family's press conference right now.
Senior legal. Welcome. I've already welcomed everyone and introduced. That's the attorney, and also the Consumer Commission is sending a senior legal advisor. That will also he or she will also join us shortly. And then I understand there's also another victim with you guys, or here today, Sean Thompson, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, exactly. In the back there. So another victim. Without further ado, let's start, and I would like to start by asking the family, maybe you can decide who wants to answer. Before we talk about the incident and your reaction to yesterday's briefing, can you just give us just tell us quickly, who was your brother? Because we don't know anything about him as a person.
Rachel was one of the gentlest souls that anyone who's had the privilege of meeting. A very responsible young man. He represented a father figure for my young nephew, Phoenicia's son. He took care of my mum and my elder sister. He was at the peak of his career, or starting the peak of his career. Achieved probably one of the major milestones of his specific career with Native BML. very level-headed person, very caring, sensible, a lot more practical than myself, and great person. So much one can say about him. It's hard to find something specific that stands out.
Thank you. Let's get to your reaction to yesterday's briefing.
On one hand, we were partially relieved that Ford has finally done a recall, which saves Ford Cougar drivers from further trauma and risk of losing their lives. On the other hand, we were very disappointed in some of the answers they gave. One can only look at international media and you'd find lots of cases on record on the Louisville issues in the US, which date back as far as 2011 with the 7th recall in 2013. The published reasons for this recall are almost exactly similar to those of South Africa. And one could imagine, why did they not take those steps in the South African vehicles to ensure that the South African consumers are not affected by that? And clearly they did not. They knew of some fires reported to them early in 2015. They've left it to the insurance company, as Nemeth has alluded to yesterday, because if you insure it, in his words, insurance should cover that. It's not for Ford to get involved in that. And it's only when the death occurred of my brother did this matter become a bit out of control for Ford. And their first gut instinct was to try and point evidence in any direction but themselves. You know, one would expect with any big brand, especially an international brand like Ford, that shortly after an incident like this, they'd contact the family and not only offer their condolences, but more importantly, share with us what would be their plan on investigating the matter, so that we could have some sort of comfort that this matter is being investigated. We did not hear from Ford whatsoever. It was only after we wrote an email to Mark Fields and Jeffrey Nemeth did we get a response from Peter Fester on behalf of that email that I sent to them. And that's where the communication channel started opening. Shibishi Muratana came on record with Rod Montano. And in that first meeting, which we worked so hard to get, he made it clear that he did not want the family there. And you know, Rod can share some very important things that were discussed at that meeting, which sort of paints a picture as to what we expected to take place from there on. Up to this point, we generally believe that a brand as reputable as Ford, they do the right thing. They just needed time to investigate, and they would give us closure we certainly needed. And more importantly than our closure was to bring a recall of sorts for all the other Cougar drivers of South Africa to save them from this trauma. It's not been easy. You know, one says, we speak to many people who've lost loved ones and they give us advice to do various things, but the most common thing is that, you know, take time will heal things. For us, it's still yesterday that we lost him, because every day we're reliving this issue. I've got to talk to media, I've got to talk to specialists, I've got to talk to international media, and we've got to go into in depth, in detail about his loss. I can account for every minute on the 4th of December that we've lost him, and everything we've done for the last year. And that's what Ford's forced us to do. They forced us to relive this loss every day, and it gets heavier and heavier for us to deal with. And they seem to think that we are looking for many different things, and they don't understand the simplest thing we want is closure. We want them to accept responsibility on this defect. And they need to understand that South Africa is as important as the people that live in the US or the UK, where they do recalls shortly after one or two incidents. We've had more fires in South Africa than they had in Louisville in the months that we've reported the fires that we've accounted for. But they've done 7 recalls in Louisville. So, you know, they're waiting for data. We've managed to accumulate data in days of taking our social media campaign live.
Would you like to add to that before we get to the attorney?
From yesterday, I just believe it's not a proper recall that's being done. I don't see very much of a difference of what they've done over the period of December. Because people are taking their cars in, they're going to repair it and give it back to them. And my biggest concern is people have did this in December and cars have burnt after. So for me, they should have taken these cars off the road. So yesterday, very disappointing that that's a safety recall. And people still have to drive around with their families, and I mean, South Africans don't feel safe in those cars. And pushing them towards their insurance if they do have a fire and take no accountability, it's gobsmacking for me that they would do that.
Attorney Montaro, first of all, on behalf of whom do you act? And then what would the next legal steps be?
Initially, I've been instructed by the Jimmy family. The initial goal was to assist in the investigation by the George SAPS into the inquest matter relating to Rochelle's death. As the matters progressed over the last year, obviously with the epidemic of Ford fires that have occurred, Renisha has taken it upon herself to establish a Facebook page, which is the Ford Cars Burning. Through the medium of that page, we have come into contact with all the other Ford Cougar fire victims. Contact has been had with them, and I'm actually also currently instructed to act on their behalf in the bringing of a class action against Ford.
I think let's open the floor for questions. Antoinette, before Antoinette, will you find the Okay, please indicate your name and your media house. There, one there, and there. You can start.
Thank you. My name is Gianni Kalidis from Eyewitness News. Just for Mr. Montano, you were saying that you're representing a number of other victims. Firstly, can you tell us how many people you are representing? And in terms of the class action, can you just give us a little bit more detail, perhaps in layman's terms, just to explain to us what this means going forward in taking this action against Ford?
Yesterday morning we attended at the National Consumer Commission. We handed in 31 formal claims. We are in the process of obtaining the remaining few victims. The difficulty that we've had is obviously during the December period is getting into contact with those persons. Consultations are ongoing, and we do anticipate that we would act on behalf of all Ford Cougar fire victims. The class action aspect relates to the common thread that it is obviously targeted at Ford, would be the respondent in the matter. Each individual claim would obviously be dealt with on its own merits. We currently intend pursuing such actions jointly through the NCC, as well as bringing the necessary civil claims against Ford for the losses suffered by the parties.
Graham?
Graham Huskin from the Times. In terms of the Ford High Court application against the family, and we saw in court last week that they've accused the family of being obstructive, the police of being obstructive and deliberately.
Well, that's where we leave that particular press conference. The gist of it comes out of the family litigation will continue. Of course, we've been asking you the question of the day on this specific story. Has Ford South Africa done enough to deal with the Cougar debacle? And you guys, well, the Cougar crisis, it's a burning issue, as I was called a little bit earlier. Let's have a look at some of your tweets with regards to this so that we can then move on. Here we go. This one from Lawrence Bailey. Lawrence Bailey comes out. He says, if you manufacture something, you must make 100% sure that the product adheres to safety regulations, and Ford hasn't done so. Quite a considered view there from Lawrence. It goes on. Surely there's something seriously wrong with a Cougar, and the authorities at Ford SA must be held accountable. Yes, and it will be tested in a court of law by the looks of it. Sipo Mahoro says, Newsroom, no. They must compensate all those 39 burnt vehicles. I think it's 43 at this point, Sipo, and that number could even rise. The extrovert says, Newsroom, let's give credit to Ford SA. They're trying to resolve the issue. Yes, Kemuketse, but it's taken a couple of years to get to this point. Konanatso says, Newsroom, not at all, but if it was in another country, they were going to pay a lot of money. We have no tough law in this country to fine, says Konanatso. Now, we move on, of course. We've been dealing with issues of gender, issues of religion, even issues of traditional healers and pastors. Now, in the latest, police in Nebo, near Groblersdal, have launched a manhunt for a traditional healer who accused of raping a 16-year-old girl at Khamarichani village. Police say the girl was seeking help from this traditional healer. The healer was well known in the area, but he disappeared after the incident. What can be done to stop the practice of dodgy traditional healers that exploit women? To find out, well, we are now joined by Toko Mbuluwana, who's from the Commission for Gender Equality here in South Africa. She's the Deputy Chairperson. A very good morning to you, Toko. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Now, we've had lots of issues around women. There's this one with the traditional healer. You watched the interview a little bit earlier about women having to pay 5,000 rand to find a marriage proposal within 90 days. At the Gender Commission, we're in the 21st century. How do you view all these kinds of things?
Well, it's difficult. It's difficult to promote our constitution in South Africa. The constitution is very clear that you are okay the way you are. If you are a woman, you are okay in the way you are. And so you can practice your religion. People make their choices, but they must make choices that are within the constitution. If you want to practice as a traditional healer, then you can't break the law. If you rape, you are a criminal, period. Report to the police. If the police don't do anything about it, come to the Gender Commission. We will make sure that that prosecution happens, because that's a crime.
Now, I spoke to the pastor. I'm sure you watched the interview.
Yes,
it was
yes.
very interesting.
Yes.
I asked the pastor whether this idea that a woman must be married in order to achieve her life, in order to achieve fulfillment, in order to be recognized, where this idea comes from. She couldn't tell me where in Scripture this thing is written, but this idea that women can only achieve some sense of fulfillment through marriage. At the Gender Commission, do you find this archaic?
It definitely is. In fact, South Africa has evolved so much that would have lots of women not in leadership if we were to pursue that. In fact, there are lots of very successful women, single women who run families, bring up children, balanced children if they have children. And in fact, a woman doesn't even have to have a child. You make a choice because the Constitution allows you to achieve, to fly the highest and to achieve your objectives in life. So you don't need a man to be successful. You just need your own initiative and your own drive. So as the Commission for Gender Equality, we do think indeed that they are entitled to their views as a church and their belief systems, but those belief systems should not be seen as the law that governs the country.
Why is it so easy for traditional healers and churches and the like to target women?
It's desperation. They don't only target women, they will also target vulnerable groups, people who want jobs. Sometimes, I mean, we've got cases where in South Africa, people still believe that if you had a part of a person with albinism, a little part bent, and then you drink a little bit, then you'll get a job. It's part of desperation that people have. But things that are illegal should be illegal. And we ask traditional leaders, we ask traditional healers and religious leaders to adhere to the law, because they will be arrested as well if they break the law.
5,000 rand to find a man in 90 days. surely in 2017, this is laughable, isn't it?
It is, indeed, indeed. You don't have to pay to find a man. If it's a real man,
they are for free.
Yeah, you can get a great man without paying a cent. All you do is to talk.
Yes.
Have a conversation, arrive at a particular agreement with the two of you, and enjoy your life.
I love the way that you think about this. It seems like, in the end, common sense. But you're right. There are many desperate people in the world, and it's easy to prey on the weak or when people are in a moment of weakness. But how do we protect women going forward like this?
I think we should continue to uphold the Constitution, to do a lot of education of our people, but we also call on leadership. Look, we can't go into that church and tell that pastor how to do, but we also need a lot of people who go to that church to really understand that there are limits to practicing your religion.
Yeah.
We are happy that the CRL Commission has a report that they are going to issue on regulation of some of these extremism that we see in the churches, so that people are not taken advantage of. So that report is going to come out. But we know that they are under a lot of pressure themselves because religious leaders don't want to be touched on that front, especially if it also touches the bottom line, you know. The bottom line is very important.
Especially if your bottom line makes you drive a Ferrari in this case.
So
it's the kind of things that we have to, unfortunately, have to see it for what it is in South Africa. But now, as we wrap up this conversation, it's a very nice one I've had with you. Thank you. I enjoyed it. But just give us your message out there to these vulnerable women first, but also, I think, as the Gender Commission, you have a duty to send a message to these religious leaders and traditional healers and traditional leaders who still find ways to exploit women.
We just want to say, as the Commission for Gender Equality, South Africa has got a constitution. And the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And if people break the law, they will be arrested. And women must not feel that they have no voice. If you really feel strongly, come to the Gender Commission. We will assist you if you feel exploited. But we also want to say to women, you don't need anybody else to achieve your goals in life. Girl children should be brought up in a way that they can also feel as they grow up that they are good in their own right. They are
good enough.
Good enough.
Yes.
They don't need anybody to mold them into something else. So this is what our Constitution and our country preaches in South Africa.
Great talking to you today.
Thank you.
It's always nice to hear that kind of thing. I'm a father of 4 girls, so it's something that I'm very passionate about.
Absolutely.
You have to develop as a man also, and maybe the message to the men is be present, be better fathers, be better brothers, be better husbands, and all of our problems eventually will go away. Thank you for coming to talk to us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, that's from the Commission for Gender Equality here in South Africa. Togum Pulwana, she's the Deputy Chairperson, joining us here on the Newsroom show, talking about, well, religious or traditional healers and practitioners that have been exploiting women here in South Africa. We're going to take a short little commercial break here on the Newsroom show. When we come back, we will escalate this very discussion. Don't go away.
I don't know if I'm going to succeed, but I want you to tell us, who are these 3 people that you have opened corruption charges against at the Brooklyn police station? How senior are they?
Very.
Are these people who are serving in the political office of the executive mayor?
Yes.
Which means they are no longer working for the city now.
Well, I can tell you that one of them is actually finding themselves employed in another municipality.
You are not going to tell us the names?
No, you're not going to get names from me.
Are people still getting free Wi-Fi in Tshwane?
People are still getting free Wi-Fi, and we will actually make it one of the basic services that our residents will get.
Whether you're looking for a restaurant, public transport, or a university, a lot of us use our smartphone apps to find the closest one. On Network, we chat to those who play a role in Africa's tech space.
We have taken financial services closer to the people. Yeah, mobile penetration is pretty high.
Apple take 30%, keep 70%.
On Network, we give you Africa's social media and technology news. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
Hello again, welcome back. This is Newsroom. Now, marriage is now a social norm, and society, especially ours, expects one to get married and to do so even before the age of 30. Last year, thousands of women from all corners of the earth flocked to Gallagher Estate in Midrand, each paying between 450 to 5,000 Rand in a promise of finding a man within 90 days. Now, to find out why women would resort to such extreme measures to get married, we are joined from our Sea Point studios by Dr. Elena Moore. She's a senior lecturer at the Department of Sociology at the University of Cape Town. Dr. Moore, thank you for being with us on Newsroom.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and good morning to the viewers.
Dr. Moore, why in 2017 does a woman still have to be married in order to achieve some sense of self and fulfillment in the way that we are seeing?
Well, I actually disagree with the question to begin with. First, I have to point out that the majority of African women, and particularly in South Africa, don't marry, never marry, and will never have married by the time they're 50. So a large proportion, particularly in South Africa, and of African women don't marry. Secondly, we see a lot of women delaying marriage, and a lot of women going ahead with motherhood and not marrying. So the question that you pose is slightly misleading to kind of set up the conversation as if all women experience this pressure. Having said that, there are
you telling me women don't?
Reasons.
Are you saying that women don't? Women don't experience the pressure to get married?
No, I think they do. They might experience pressure depending on the community, depending on their circumstances. So, for example, rural people living in different parts of the country might experience more pressure, or certain women living in more conservative or particular communities might feel more pressure, given the fact that marriage is often morally and socially kind of approved form of cohabiting, of having a relationship, of procreating and parenting. So there are reasons why women might feel that pressure. The actual statistical evidence shows us that marriage as an institution is less favorable than it once was, at least, for the last decade or so. So since the 1960s, fewer women have been marrying, and those that marry much later in life.
Tell us a little bit more about the numbers. Tell us about the research methodology that you're talking about in this case.
Okay, sure. So these are, national, statistically representative data sets. That means that the figures that I present are accurate, as in the figures show us that they're national data sets. So these will be household and individual questionnaires that would be conducted on an annual basis. It could be the census, for example.
Okay.
But the census is only carried out every 10 years. So there are other surveys that are conducted on an annual basis. That would be carried out for up to 15,000 people in the country and asking questions about their marital status. And from that data, we can ascertain that at least 40% of African women by the age of 50 have never been married. So obviously some will marry and some will divorce. and some might informally separate. But the figures are showing us that over time, and particularly since the 1990s and the last decade in particular, fewer women. However, that differs for women in different parts of the country, as I said, or from different ethnic groups or population, what was used to be called population groups. So white women are more likely to white women are more likely to marry in South Africa compared to black South African women.
Answer the question on the screen there, if you can see it. There, you have it on screen. Does society equate marriage and children with success? What do you think?
Yeah, that's an interesting question you pose. A lot of the research shows that people who are in marriages are happier, healthier, wealthier. But there is problems in such research studies. The problem is that people who are in marriage, first of all, are of higher income groups. So they're bound to be wealthier if they're belonging to higher income groups in the first place. Secondly, over the last, let's say, decade or so, it's been easier to leave a marriage. So if the people who are unhappy in a marriage can leave the marriage easier, those that remain in the marriage will be happier than those that have left the marriage. Therefore, those types of messages that are sent out that are based on scientific studies are correlations, what we call correlations in social science. They show a relationship between being in a marriage and being happier, but they're not definitive. It's not a direct relationship. Just because you're in a marriage doesn't mean you're happier, or doesn't mean that your child will have a happier childhood. So what children benefit from is children benefit from enduring relationships, enduring committed relationship. That doesn't matter if it's a marriage or it's a partnership. It doesn't have to be marriage per se.
Let's talk about delinquency then. I want to test what you're saying, because you're saying it's children, neither way, the development doesn't really matter. In South Africa, black and coloured fathers are absent around 60% of the time in the parental home. In Indian and white households, that number is up to 85%. The numbers of the delinquency numbers amongst young people in both those communities are about the same as well. So that goes completely against what you're saying.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful when we start making associations between race, fatherhood, and delinquency in children. So there are historical reasons why many black South African fathers or coloured South African fathers are not co-present or living, co-residing with their children. There's a typical example with the migrant labour system, where many men and women in addition, had to move away from where they were forced to live or were living to earn a living, basically. And that pattern has continued and has caused great fragmentation in the family. That's not to say, though, in the contemporary period that black South African men or coloured South African men are reckless or delinquent, or are absent fathers.
No, we're simply talking about the relationship between absentee parents in the household.
Okay, but I think we have to be careful about the relationship. The nature of a relationship is about quality of contact. It's not about co-residence. You can be living elsewhere and have a very healthy and good relationship with your child. Many migrant parents do that. Many divorced parents do that. Many separated parents do that. So there are many reasons why a father or a mother may be absent.
Okay, maybe we're digressing.
What's important...
Maybe we're digressing the discussion a little bit, and we're talking about something we shouldn't be. 5,000 rand, thousands of women, thousands, not just a few, thousands from all over the African continent, including as far as Seychelles, have come to Gallagher Estate here in Johannesburg for a princely sum of 5,000 rand to find a man within 90 days. How do you view that as an expert?
Yeah, I find it... Well, I don't find it hugely shocking. This happens across, the world. It's not just in South Africa. These types of practices might exist in India and other places across the world. So I don't find it incredibly shocking. Also, marriage is, to some extent, a more secure kind of relationship than what we call an informal union that isn't registered or regulated or, recognized, let's say. So women, there is the state, the South African state in particular, has, historically at least, given more security when people enter into a marriage. And let's think about it. It's harder to leave a marriage than it is to leave just a partnership. So once you're in a marriage, even though we know many marriages are full of conflict, it takes more effort and a lot more work to exit that marriage and exit your commitments. So while I'm not shocked that that many women are attending such conferences, because marriage is still a more secure kind of relationship, I am surprised that they're paying such huge sums of money, so, as you said, up to 5,000 rand, to find a partner. I think you can find a partner in other ways that might be less expensive, for example.
Doctor, are you married?
But we also need to remember that marriage is not about, as well, just love and companionship. Historically, it was often about an economic contract, where marriage was arranged between family members, not individuals.
Are you married?
So this particular.
Are you married?
Yes.
You're married?
I am married. Yes. I've been married for, I think, 7 or 8 years. You can ask my husband. I think it's 8 years.
I'm sure he'll be very upset with you if he's watching and you don't remember that sacred day. But the interesting that
But again, we'd be careful. I'm married for, I won't go into my personal circumstances, but we marry for different reasons. And as I said, the state, regardless of where you're from and what state you belong to, but the state can prioritize marriage and give advantages, let's say, for immigration purposes, or for taxation purposes, or inheritance purposes. So someone might marry not because they want to be married and commit to this kind of religious sacrament. They might just benefit from it in other ways, like be able to stay in the country and work in the country legitimately.
Doctor, I'm the father to 4 girls, ranging from 22 down to 9 years old.
Sure.
What advice can you give me if I want to bring up young women that are self-sufficient? Then I believe that you don't need a man in order to find your place in the world. What do I have to do?
Well, I think what some of the evidence is showing us, and what I would probably say to my daughters, is that, as you said yourself, a woman and a younger girl who becomes a woman might want to be financially more self-confident and secure before she commits to a relationship in a marriage situation. So attitudes of many women in South Africa say that it's not that they don't want to marry, it's that they want to achieve certain goals before they marry. And those goals are things like obtaining a higher level of education, or obtaining a certain level of income or a job at least, and securing maybe the financial circumstances of their household. There are other kin members that are sometimes just as important as finding a partner. So supporting your household members and making sure that you're financially independent and your household is independent before you attach yourself to another household or join another household through marriage. So they were the kind of lessons I would probably teach my own daughter, who I have one daughter, and I suspect they might be things that I would tell my older daughters if I had them, like in your case.
Fantastic. Now, the interesting stat that you mentioned to me, and the one, and probably going to stay with me and really bother me for the next couple of days, you talked about black South African women. The numbers say that they're less married, or they don't really get married as much, or the like. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about those numbers. Where do they come from, and how did you get to that place?
Okay, so as I said earlier, these are national quantitative surveys that are conducted around the country that are statistically representative, which means there's no bias. It's not like I just asked 100 people in Sea Point or in Johannesburg what do they think. These numbers are representative of everyone in the country, whether they're 20 years old or 50 years old or living in a rural area. So they're accurate, and we can rely on them. Okay, it's a bit like a census, and they're conducted annually. And through these data sets, we can map how people are moving in and out of relationships, and how they are choosing to be either, let's say, in a customary marriage or a civil marriage, or whether they are preferring to be cohabiting. So levels of cohabiting are slightly increasing, but not to the point where it's taking over as a form of long-term committed relationship. So what I mean by that is we can't explain the drop in marriage rates by higher rates of cohabitation. It's a partial explanation, but it's not the whole story by any means.
Dr. Moore, thank you for coming in today and facing the music here with me. I know I can be a little bit difficult at times. Thank you for being so candid with us today. That's Dr. Elena Moore. She's from the Department of Sociology at the University of Cape Town. And, well, she was quite tough. She was quite tough. She took it. Now, we're going to take a short commercial break, of course. It's been an interesting show, actually. I need to go and have a drink of water. Kendall Makamati is coming in. Let's take that break. He'll come back and he'll talk all things sports, of course. It's AFCON 2017, and it's been well, as far as goals concerned, a little bit slow start after a short break.
We should ask the question, is the ICC targeting African leaders?
For the life of me, I would hate to be charged with crimes against humanity. Very few people can deny nor ignore that there are crimes being committed on the African continent at this very moment. Now, we need to be able to hold people to account regardless of where they are from.
South Africa has a body of international law that it's committed itself to, that seeks to counter impunity in the world when it comes to gross human rights violations. In this specific instance, we have a problem. By the way, you must remember that South Africa has a law on extradition and mutual legal assistance that enable us to extradite any fugitive of justice from anywhere in the world so that they can stand trial for whatever crimes.
On Network, we tell you about Africa's social media and technology landscape. 21st century economies rely on technology to truly thrive.
We have quite a comprehensive portfolio of interventions in the tech entrepreneurship space.
And Africans are using tech and social media to solve the continent's unique challenges.
App Nigeria is an online marketplace.
Radio Vibe is a social media platform for radio music.
That's Network with me, Pumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
Welcome back. Now, as Evan has just said, the AFCON is underway, and Ivory Coast got their Africa Cup of Nations title defense off to a slow start after playing to a goalless draw against Togo at the Stade d'Oyem in the north of Gabon. It was truly an inauspicious start. It was the first goalless match in this year's AFCON so far.
Day 3 of the 2017 Africa Cup of Nations saw Ivory Coast begin their title defense against the West African rivals, Togo. Despite missing the likes of Didier Drogba and Yaya Toure for this year's tournament, the Ivorians came into the contest confident of 3 points. Both the teams have met 3 times in this competition. 2 of those games ended in a draw, while the recent fixture in 2013 produced a 2-1 win for Ivory Coast. However, the game got off to a subdued start, with neither team managing to assert their dominance early on. The first real chance of the contest went to Ivory Coast, Solomon Kalou, in the thick of things in an attempt to make things happen for the defending champions. Togo, who have been in the back foot for much part of the opening exchanges, had a good opportunity to open the scoring in the 28th minute, only to be denied by the brilliance of Ivory Coast goalkeeper. Despite both the teams' attempts to open the scoring at the interval, there was little to separate the two teams on the scoreboard. Similar to the first half, the second 45 minutes got off to a subdued start, with both the teams struggling to find their rhythm going forward. Wilfred Zaha, who switched his international allegiance from England ahead of the tournament, came close to opening the scoring for the Ivorians 13 minutes into the second half. Scoreless, however, that's how things remained after the final whistle. Joseph Mohale, SABC News.
Now, staying with the AFCON, the DR Congo enjoyed top spot in Group C after beating Morocco 1-0 in an eventful AFCON 2017 game in Gabon. The Atlas Lions almost opened the scoring in the second minute as midfielder Mbaka Busafa rattled the crossbar.
Lovely initial touch to try and serve up a shot at the edge of the box. Then it eventually comes in and shakes the bar.
Now, Morocco started off the better of the two sides once again in the second half, but it was the DRC who found in the back of the net against the run of play.
Yeah, well, the ball in. Oh, it's come off the post and smashed home. Beautifully done in the reaction to find the opener.
Now, Morocco continued to press forward in search of an equalizer, but were denied by the keeper. DR Congo's Lomalisa Mutambala was shown a second yellow with less than 10 minutes to go.
He got to the ball, but the problem here is he would have gotten to Fajir as well. Now, he was already on a yellow, so he picks up another second yellow card. Marching orders, 10 minutes to go, and things change dramatically.
And Morocco were denied an equalizer in the closing minutes when DR Congo goalkeeper Lei Matampi made a brilliant stop at point-blank range to block Youssef Al-Arabi's header. Now, you'll have to know that after 560 minutes, there have only been 11 goals scored so far. Now, moving on to other sporting news, Serena Williams launched her bid for a 23rd Grand Slam title with a 6-4, 6-3 win over Belinda Bencic at the Australian Open. The 35-year-old American moved superbly under a hot sun at Rod Laver Arena to rout the Swiss talent in 79 minutes. Williams smashed a volley on her second to close it out and set up a second-round clash against Czech Lucy Shafarova.
Up against the player that had beaten her before, but after the opening set, which was compelling, it seemed to be one-way traffic until that little flourish at the end for the 19-year-old.
Now, Johanna Konta swept past Belgian Kirsten Flipkens to reaffirm her credentials as a force to be reckoned with at the Australian Open. The 25-year-old ground down her opponent 7-5, 6-2. And Canada's Milos Raonic eased into the second round with a convincing straight sets win over German Dustin Brown. The third seed dished out a 6-3, 6-4, 6-2 masterclass to Brown. Rafael Nadal also progressed to the second round with a straight sets win over German Florian Mayer. He won 6-3, 6-4, 6-4 in 2 hours and 4 minutes against a 33-year-old in Melbourne. Now, Willie Smith of Team Road Cover is on course to successfully defend his Mpumalanga Cycle Tour title as he won last year as the race is nearing its end. The Ladenburg-born Smith is leading in 3 categories, including the general classification.
Smith is flying the Mpumalanga flag in this race. Although his team is based in Johannesburg, he trains in his home province, and it comes as no surprise to see him edging closer to being crowned the champion of the Mpumalanga Cycle Tour again. Jean Mutsiwa has taken over the polka dots jersey in the fight for the King of the Mountains. The rider, who is also Mpumalanga born and bred, is wary of Smith, who is a threat in this category as well.
My chances is to hold on to Willie Smith because he's one of the guys who have the leader jersey. So he's the guy who knows this road, and then he's the guy who can able to go on the breakaway and then stay on the breakaway. So I'll stick with our plan tomorrow, but even today I'm gonna say tomorrow is the day I'm gonna hold on.
I know what John is capable of, so this is gonna be good for the region because we still want to come back to the province and see how we can develop the sport and get more guys into the racing. So this is good for us, like because the leader is from Mpumalanga, and look now the Pokoto J's leader is originally from Mpumalanga. So it means we can, if we can work together, we can come back and put more into the province.
The Mpumalanga Cycling Union is using this event to showcase and search for more talent in the province.
It's a very great fortune for us that we've got the tour here and that we can showcase it all over and everybody can see us going through the towns, going through the province, and even showcasing this beautiful province of ours and raise the interest in cycling through that.
In the 6th and the last stage of the race, the cyclists will ride to Bright Canyon, where there will be prize presentation for the winners. Mtutuzi Ndlovu, SABC News, Swatini, near Hoedspruit.
There you have it. That's what we've got for you in terms of the sports. Up next, we've got Azri, who's got the weather report.
Thanks very much and warm welcome. Let's take a look at your weather details. We are expecting 30% chance of thunder showers over the northern parts of South Africa. That's Limpopo going to the eastern parts. Over the interior of Zimbabwe, 30 to 60% chance of thunder showers, and 80 can be expected over the northern parts, the interior of Mozambique. The whole of Malawi going to the southern parts of Zambia and the far southern parts of Angola. Otherwise, do expect isolated thunder showers for today over most parts of the central interior, going to most parts of SADC. Tomorrow, still seeing clear skies over the western parts, partly cloudy over the northern parts, going to the interior of Mozambique and some parts of Malawi and Zambia. Do expect 30 to 80% chance of thunder showers. Northern parts of South Africa, just partly cloudy and no much rain can be expected. We do have a warning of high fire danger over the interior of Western Cape to some parts of Northern Cape. Please do take note of that and do not cause any unnecessary fires. If you do see those fires, please do report to the authorities. Extremely hot conditions expected over the Northern Cape to some parts of Western Cape, with a maximum of 34 over Cape Town and 37 over Uppington. Pretoria sitting at a maximum of 29, just partly cloudy skies, and rainy weather can be expected over Mbombela. Zimbabwe, we are expecting partly cloudy. Rainy weather is expected, 30 to 80% chance of thunder showers. Harare at a maximum of 24 degrees and 29 over Mahajanga. Windhoek at a maximum of 31 with partly cloudy skies. Moving further towards the central interior, we're still expecting partly cloudy skies, 30 to 60% chance of thunder showers, mostly over the western parts. Over the interior, partly cloudy over Kigali with a maximum of 27. Sunny skies can be expected over Juba with a maximum of 38 degrees and 23 will be your maximum over Addis Ababa. Mogadishu, partly cloudy at a maximum of 31. Let's go to the northern parts where we're expecting clear skies over most parts of the Sahara Desert, but rainy weather can be expected along the coastal regions of Tunis and over Algeria. Towards the southern coastal regions, Nigeria, 30% chance of thunder showers, partly cloudy over the interior. Moving further to tomorrow, we're still expecting similar conditions, clear over the Sahara Desert and partly cloudy skies along the coastal regions, and over the southern parts, just partly cloudy, no much rain is expected over those regions. Cold temperatures over Baghdad at 10 degrees and 16 over Damascus, 14 over Benghazi, Cairo at a maximum of 21, partly cloudy skies forecast for tomorrow. Over the western parts, we're seeing Marrakech at a maximum of 19 degrees and 18 over Las Palmas. Tunis will be cold with 30% chance of showers at a maximum of 11 degrees. Getting hot as you move towards the southern parts. Take a look at Bamako, a maximum of 36 and 38 over Niamey, Nigeria. Lagos at a maximum of 32, partly cloudy skies. If you are in Dakar, Senegal, a maximum of 23 is forecast for tomorrow. That is all from the weather desk. Ndayando.
Keeping you up to date with business developments.
There's no shortage of money in the system. There's a shortage of implementation capacity to actually get things done.
Always on point with news of the day.
May has promised radical social and economic reforms, fueling speculation over the future of current senior figures.
On the ball every time with all sports codes.
The Joburg side already have a quarter-final at home, and a victory against the Argentines will ensure home semi-final.
Accurate weather updates after every bulletin. Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
came up with this really cool concept that we both absolutely loved. And it was tennis-inspired, sports-likes, if you will, but still really edgy. And of course, still staying true to who she is as a designer, which I felt was very important.
I am allowing them. If you do not keep your promise, you will never see my children again.
Fiona is a talented chess player. If it wasn't for her community that supported her, she would not have been where she is today. And so it takes a village.
I love working with children. They give you so much joy, and watching them achieve what we ask them to do is really heartening.
Children, Miss Hannigan is gone for good.
Mac Miller, the 24-year-old new school hip-hop international rapper, was shocked when he realized the big following he has in Mzansi. For a 1-hour dose of entertainment, stay tuned on Trends every Saturday at 12.
It's 1100 hours Central Africa time on this Tuesday, the 17th of January. It's half the month, almost gone. Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the final hour. My name is Elvis Preston.
I'm Kendall Makamate.
And this is the Newsroom. Now today we focus on Ford SA that has finally admitted that a fault is causing some of its Ford Cougar SUVs to catch fire and recalled more than 4,000 Ford Cougars. So we're asking that question, Kendall.
Exactly, directly to the heart of the matter is, has Ford South Africa done enough to deal with the Cougar debacle?
Well, there you have it. That's the Cougar on fire right there. And it almost reminds me of a song, That Car is on Fire. But
oh, yes.
We're also conducting a poll, more serious matters here, on the interim Traditional Health Practitioners Council that was set up by Parliament in 2015 to regulate traditional health practitioners in the country, but there's not been any registration thus far. So on our poll, we are asking you,
should all traditional healers and their practices be regulated? That's what we would like to find out from you. And you know what, Elvis, we've actually received quite a few votes, 164 votes coming in so far. Yeah. And the responses have been interesting.
Yeah, overwhelmingly. 73% say yes, they should be regulated. So keep them coming and we'll continue. But there's also some comments, Kendall.
Yeah, Sililo Motati reckons there are practices done by the Sangomas, mostly with human parts. The issue is not about women, but protecting the society. That's one part of the argument, isn't it?
That's one part of it. Homer says, by whom, though, I don't think the Department of Health understand their work. By whom should they be registered through? Well, that should be part and parcel of it, we would suggest then.
And here's I am Jesse saying it has been discussed for many years that traditional healers should be working with other medical practices.
And there you have it. Jesse has hit it right on the nail there, on the head of that nail. So let's see if there's any more comments coming through. No? Yes?
I believe that would be the last one. Yes.
That's the last one there. Thank you so much for all those comments. You can keep them coming on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. Let us know what's on your mind in relation to the question as well as the poll that we're doing. But right now, let's take a look at your news headlines. The family of Rochelle Jimmy, who was killed in a Ford Cougar 1.6 when it went up in flames, say they still intend to take action against Ford. And Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to lead a South African delegation on behalf of President Jacob Zuma to the World Economic Forum. The meeting officially kicks off in Davos, in Switzerland, today. And ESCOM has served notices on 3 Northern Cape municipalities that the electricity supply will be interrupted as from tomorrow if they do not pay the power utility. Those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the final hour in the sport.
Elvis, it's been a cracker, Jack, of the sporting week so far. We've got, like I said earlier, 2 massive tournaments on the go, both on the continent as well as out in Australia. And all of you that have been following this, good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. First up, 10-man Leopards of DRC staged an upset at AFCON, beating the mighty Atlas Lions of Morocco by a single goal to nil.
Wallen was come off the post and smashed home. Beautifully done in the reaction to find the opener.
Serena Williams brings on the intensity at the Australian Open as she powers over Swiss Belinda Bencic.
It was a tough opening round for Serena Williams, up against the player that had beaten her before.
I'm prepared to work really hard. I'm still young and fast, and obviously Lewis is going to be a great reference. You know, he's many-time world champion.
For the first time since 2009, Mercedes will have no German driver in their lineup as Finn Valtteri Bottas joins the team to replace Nico Rosberg as Lewis Hamilton's driving partner. I've got this in more detail for you at 11:35. For now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. The family of Rochelle Jimmy, who was killed in a Ford Cougar 1.6 when it went up in flames, say they still intend to take action against Ford. This follows Ford's recall of over 4,500 of their vehicles yesterday. Jimmy's car was one of close to 50 of the models that have caught fire in South Africa. Ford South Africa's CEO, Jeff Nemeth, says his death cannot be linked to the mechanical faults of the car as long as the case is still being investigated.
You know, one would expect with any big brand, especially an international brand like Ford, that shortly after an incident like this, they'd contact the family and not only offer their condolences, but more importantly, share with us what would be their plan on investigating the matter so that we could have some sort of comfort that this matter is being investigated. We did not hear from Ford whatsoever. It was only after we wrote an email to Mark Fields and Jeffrey Nemeth did we get a response from Peter Fester on behalf of that email that I sent to them. And that's where the communication channel started opening. Shibishi Muratana came on record with Rod Montano. And in that first meeting, which we worked so hard to get, he made it clear that he did not want the family there. And, you know, Rod can share some very important things that were discussed at that meeting, which sort of paints a picture as to what we expected to take place from there on. Up to this point, we generally believe that a brand as reputable as Ford, they do the right thing. They just needed time to investigate, and they would give us closure we certainly needed. And more importantly than our closure was to bring a recall of sorts for all the other Cougar drivers of South Africa to save them from this trauma. It's not been easy. You know, one says, we speak to many people who've lost loved ones and they give us advice to do various things, but the most common thing is that, you know, take time will heal things. For us, it's still yesterday that we lost him, because every day we're reliving this issue. I've got to talk to media, I've got to talk to specialists, I've got to talk to international media, and we've got to go into in depth, in detail about his loss. I can account for every minute on the 4th of December that we've lost him, and everything we've done for the last year. And that's what Ford's forced us to do. They forced us to relive this loss every day, and it gets heavier and heavier for us to deal with. And they seem to think that we are looking for many different things, and they don't understand the simplest thing we want is closure. We want them to accept responsibility on this defect.
Meanwhile, the Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa, is expected to lead a South African delegation on behalf of President Jacob Zuma to the World Economic Forum, which officially kicks off today in Davos, Switzerland. Almost 3,000 government leaders, business leaders, as well as labor representatives will converge under the theme, Responsive and Responsible Leadership. That meeting takes place at a time when the economy is facing global headwinds as well as political uncertainty. Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected to address delegates today when he officially opens the 4-day meeting. Xi Jinping is the first Chinese president to attend the forum. He's expected to talk about globalization and some of China's concerns around threats made by the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump on the possibility of scrapping some of the trade deals. Some of the delegates expect leaders of the conference, or at the conference rather, to talk about inequality and what can be done to ensure that globalization also benefits the poor. South Africa is expected to use the meeting as an opportunity to position the country as a preferred investment destination. And back home, Eskom has served notices on 3 Northern Cape municipalities that their electricity supply will be interrupted as from tomorrow if they do not pay the power utility. Eskom says it will cut electricity supply for about 4.5 hours a day during the week and 5.5 hours during the weekend. Meanwhile, the Ventersdorp Clockwe municipality have adopted a payment plan to Eskom in a bid to avoid power cuts. The amalgamated municipalities have already paid 28 million of the 62 million rand owed. Eskom cut off power for 2 hours at Mamusa and Naledi municipalities in the northwest yesterday. Eskom says it will continue with its action against municipalities that fail to adhere to the deadline. Speaking earlier on Morning Live, the power utility spokesperson said he's confident municipalities will be able to meet their obligations to pay.
We are now comfortable with the arrangements that have been made by the provincial governments in the Free State and part of Northwest. We will see as to how Mpumalanga pans out, but they still have a few more days to go, which is on the 23rd of January this year.
But then when we zoom a little bit into the Northern Cape, talk to us, because we are reading on the bulletin that they will be experiencing power cuts for like 4 hours weekdays, 5.5 hours during the weekends.
Essentially, in the Northern Province, Northern Cape, we have 2 municipalities there. We had given them until tomorrow, the 18th, to make arrangements with us as to how they're going to pay or make the actual payments. But if they don't, if they fail to make any payments, then unfortunately from 6 o'clock in the morning we will interrupt their power supply. So in a 24-hour cycle, we will only interrupt their power supply for 4 hours. So in other words, they'll have power for 20 hours, but for 4 hours from 6 until 8 in the morning, and then late in the afternoon from 5 o'clock until 7:30, we will interrupt their power supply if they do not pay. So this is very unfair indeed to customers and industries in those particular provinces that are paying regularly, but unfortunately when you have a situation like now in Vryburg where they do not have electricity, it's very unfair. But from our side, and this was also made very clear by the court, by the way, about 2 weeks ago, AfriForum had taken Eskom to court, and the court made it very clear that people in those provinces, if they have any qualms with the power interruptions, they don't have to vent their frustrations on Eskom, because Eskom has a direct contract with municipalities, and municipalities are the ones that are failing their customers, and therefore customers have to take their frustrations to municipalities. So we're hopeful, though, that even in a place like Vryburg, there will be some resolution. Today, during the course of the day, we are scheduled to have a meeting in Mafikeng with the provincial government together with the local municipality in Vryburg and Stella, and we are hopeful that by the end of today we should have a resolution.
A group of Durban Christian leaders have raised concerns about the hate speech bill. Now, they believe criminalizing preaching against homosexuality and immorality is problematic. The bill seeks to create the offences of hate crimes and hate speech and to put in place measures to prevent and combat these offences. The aim is to address the increasing number of racial incidents and to further address other types of criminal conduct motivated by bias, prejudice, or intolerance in the form of hate crimes and hate speech, which, as you know, have occurred in the recent past. The Ministerial Leaders for Christian Rights is an association made up of 100 church leaders. They believe that the prevention and combating of hate crimes and hate speech bill prejudice the church. The organization's spokesperson, Pastor Lazarus Pillay, said they expected more than 1 million signatures on a petition that they were submitting to the Ministry of Justice objecting to the bill. Joining us now in our studios in Durban is Pastor Lazarus Pillay, who is the spokesperson for the Ministerial Leaders for Christian Rights. A very good morning to you, Pastor, and welcome.
Good morning, President, and good morning to the viewers.
Now, Pastor Lazarus, as the church, what is it that you are opposing about the prevention and combating of hate crimes and hate speech bill?
Well, President, the situation is that the draft bill that is presented right now is being opposed by our organization, who represents the broader fraternity of churches, predominantly in the KZN region, purely because this draft bill is broad in its nature and, as you rightly said, is to preserve the rights of the South Africans, but in the same token, we believe that it's contentious in its nature, because in the same token, as the said constitution that protects the rights for spiritual freedom, rights and the rights of speech, in the same token we find that the same sections 15, 16 and 31 that preserves the rights for the freedom of religion especially is not basically protected in this draft bill. So we find it contentious, and therefore we're calling on the government to consult with the church rather than the bill's findings as been presented at the moment.
Pastor, why do you believe, though, that criminalizing preaching against homosexuality and immorality is problematic? And if so, why?
Well, Mr. President, for years the church has always been supportive and has been the main organ that assisted government and assisted communities for the building of the moral fiber of the country. For years and generations, it has used the Bible as its constitutional book to drive that message across. And hence we have morally uplifted communities. And therefore we find for years that this has been a contributor for the upliftment of social and moral fiber of society. In the same token, we find that the broad spectrum of this bill, and in retrospect to Section 3 and Section 4 of the draft bill, we feel is very broad. So as much as it is speaking to this particular to the situations arising in the country, but in the same token, we believe that the same organs of the church and organizations that have built the moral fiber, in the same token, should be looked and consulted with to see how the church could also be protected in the same way.
How would you like to see, or what would you like to see happen with this bill?
We'd like to firstly see that the fact that the draft bill has been dictated to, in the sense that it had a time frame, and this time frame was given to the communities to respond by no later than the 31st of January. So therefore it didn't give much time for the broader church to communicate with its constituents. But in the same token, therefore, we had to put together an urgent petition calling for government to relook at this bill. So therefore, in essence, we're asking for a consultative approach. And in the same token, as much as the church would like to support any hate or any act of crime that is being incited, in the same token, it should be preserving the church as well to not see as a contributor to hate crimes and hate speech, but more as an uplifter of communities and protector in communities as well. So in the same token, as much as it is speaking against the immorality, and it's a broad sense of the immorality, in the same token, it also embraces the person who is a victim of such immorality.
Some would say that the church should be preaching the message of love, unity and peace instead of sowing divisions. What's your reaction to that, instead of opposing a bill which is trying to bring people together and make sure that they don't abuse each other?
Well, I don't think the church is contributing in that way at all. The church is very supportive in the lifting of the oppressed, and therefore it is not sowing seeds of contention, neither is it intending to sow any seeds of division or hate. All it's saying that if this bill is not being looked at in its merit, then there might be a broad understanding and interpretation, and that's what we're concerned about. We're concerned about the broad interpretation, because the bill in Section 6 calls for punitive measures, and very harsh punitive measures. So if the church is not being protected against this at the moment, the broad sense of anything goes in community might be calling it to be more of having the courts inundated with applications and having communities more discorded and more divided. And that's what we're saying, that this kind of bill will cause more contentions in communities, will cause more divides in communities. And I don't see the bill is going to basically help. And therefore, we're not saying that that at the end of the day that we should not look at contributing measures that does impact on hate crime and speech. But we're saying if it's left broadly, the church will not be looked as more embracing and uplifting. And therefore we find that many people who are exposed with this kind of prejudices do come to the church for love, and they do come to the church for an embrace, and they do come to the church for an upliftment. And the church has been doing that for years. And we're saying let the church continue to do what it was doing, and obviously within the law and within the support of the Constitution. And we're saying that this draft bill is not impacting on the directness. It's too broad, and we're calling for a consultative measure.
Now, you're busy with a petition. How many signatures have you got thus far that you want to submit to the Ministry of Justice?
We have hundreds of thousands of signatures already. We have been inundated on social platforms. We have been inundating communications throughout the country, through various forums using all different modes of communication. And we are very, very optimistic that there are millions of signatures that will be attested. And I'm getting major reports from throughout the country, many people calling for the petition. And the petition is basically going to communicate to the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development to relook at its model, to relook at its approach, and to consult with the broader public. And we're not only just talking the church, President, we're also talking about all organs and organizations that have the common cause to lift up the moral fiber. And that speaks to religions across the country and organizations across the country as well. But in particular, we are representing the church because we feel that it's impacting negatively, and it is impacting with an interpreted prejudice that could find punitive action against its practitioners. And we feel that if we don't protect the church and have this consultation with government and let be, this could become very, very serious. And in fact, it causes more problems for the country and the judiciary, yes, and its organs of investigation mechanisms, such as the various Chapter 9 institutions will find themselves inundated with unnecessary kinds of actions.
Just briefly, Pastor, in 15 seconds, have you got any recommendations for the ministry?
Yes, we recommend that the ministry consults with the church as its whole, the broader church, and we are strongly represented in the country from all corners of the city and the country. And we believe that call for a consultative measure, call for more of an approach that we could give government some form of assistance, and also to help them understand how to roll out this kind of need for legislation. We strongly believe there's a need for legislation of this nature because we feel that there's a very broad spectrum of injury to communities, and we're asking that we believe the church could become very supportive to government's cause rather than becoming oppressive.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you so much for your time joining us in our Durban studios. That was Pastor Lazarus Pillay, who's the spokesperson for the ministerial leaders for Christian rights in our Durban studios. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back after that.
Being orphaned at an early age propelled him to better heights.
When I was 16, my mother passed away, and I had no choice then to find work, and I had to juggle work between work and school. I've worked on different coffee shops, and eventually in 2012, I started my own business called City's Brew.
Laying good business acumen since childhood nurtured her good standing.
I happened to grow up in a family where my father is a businessman. And as a businessman, he used to have lots of friends from different parts of the world. Business, you need to be committed. You need to live it. You need to love it. You need to be there, at the moment.
For more inspiring stories, stay tuned to Bipilong every Friday.
People
Where is your paperwork?
I don't know what's going on. Sorry, I'm locked up.
This is not fair. Senta Basizan. Not fair.
Kuputse rent ka 200. Have to put like 200. Uri ngwana, we won. 150, 150 plus. Koloi, Leon. Let me in another one, 150.
I'm just the one to lock you out.
Yes,
I'm
that's
the
one to
keys.
lock you then out.
You are starting gangsterism.
No. No. No.
The family of Rochelle Jimmy, who was killed in a Ford Cougar 1.6 when it went up in flames, say they still intend to take action against Ford. This follows Ford's announcement yesterday to recall around 4,500 of their vehicles. The family just concluded a press briefing and Diabo Seto was there. Very good morning to you, Diabo. Can you tell us what stood out for you from the briefing and what's currently happening there?
Elvis, good morning. Well, it was a different scene today compared to the one that we saw yesterday. The family of Rochelle Jimmy today held their own press briefing to give us basically their response to yesterday's press briefing that the National Consumer Commission, together with Ford, where they made the announcement about that safety recall that they'll be doing. Of course, we know already that they'll be doing a safety recall in two parts, and they've recalled at least more than 4,000 vehicles, and they've asked them, all the vehicle owners, to bring those vehicles back to the dealers so that they can be inspected. The Jimmy family seems to be very unsatisfied with this action. The sister said during the press briefing that this is no similar to what Ford has been asking the owners to be doing in December, which is basically to take your vehicle in and for it to be inspected. And she also quite explosively told us about how she was mistreated by the National Consumer Commission and how they just generally were not happy about how the National Consumer Commission subsequently dealt with this issue. But I have with me the spokesperson of the National Consumer Commission, Mr. Trevor Hatting, to find out from him what the story was and what happened that led up to the events that made the Jimmy family so unhappy. Mr. Hatting, thank you very much for your time. Ms. Jimmy mentioned some very unsavory things about how they were treated as the National Consumer Commission, some of the things related to how they had to be escorted out of the building at your direction, I believe. Is this all true?
Let me just quickly clarify what happened there. I was contacted in the morning by reception and informed that there were people on the premises that were taking footage of the buildings and they were busy breaching security. And they informed me also that these people informed them that I gave authorization for the cameras to be allowed onto the premises. I had no such knowledge, and I told them that, no, I don't know who these people are. Could you please find out for me what their business here is? And I can assure you that there's no appointment that I have with anyone for today, because I was busy preparing for the press briefing of yesterday. Security then got back to me afterwards and insisted and said that they insist that you authorized all of this, and I said no, I don't know. I don't know what your security protocols dictate to you, but no, I never gave anyone authorization. At the end of the day, this was going to get me into trouble for allowing people onto the premises and giving them authorization to film things in a security enclosed environment. So that is basically what happened. Later on, subsequent to that, I received a phone call from the attorney who acts on behalf of the Jimmy family, and he then told me that, listen, it's me. I'm here and I have some media with me. And I said, but you know that it's unethical to bring media onto the premises when you come and submit a complaint of this kind. You should not be doing that, firstly. And secondly, do you have an appointment to come and see me? And he said he has an appointment with me. I have absolutely no appointment. I had no appointment with him. And I told him that I don't have an appointment with you. I'm busy finalizing my media briefing and all the arrangements for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to refer you to the relevant division within calling the Consumer Commission to assist you. And then senior legal guys went down, they went and assisted them, they took the complaints, processed them, and advised them further insofar as what to do. What has also happened is, and where this all actually started was around December, when this matter started gaining traction in the media. I received a call from the Renisha Jimmy, that's the name, yeah. I received a call from Renisha Jimmy, who asked a whole lot of things from me insofar as the process of the commission, the assistance we can provide, and all of those legal things. And I then guided her very well. I guided her, I assisted her with information, and I asked her to please lodge the complaint with us. She, at the time, they never lodged the complaint with us. In fact, I was hot on it that, you know what, this sounds like something very big that we can run with. And she contacted me and I told her what to do. But they never came forward to us with the matter. But I also understand, because there's looming litigation, and I do understand. And it's also because of that looming litigation that ourselves as the Commission have to be neutral, because whatever we say, whatever we do, or in particularly what we say, can jeopardize the case, their case, and we do not want to influence their case in a positive or negative way, in any way whatsoever. We need to act neutral in this. So basically, it seems like it's a very clear misunderstanding insofar as security is concerned, and also the fact that they never regarded business decorum of making an appointment to come and see, and even at that appointment I was going to ensure that I have the relevant people present at that meeting to assist them.
Two more questions. Have you subsequently blocked the Jimmy family's phone numbers? And another thing, during the press briefing, you mentioned the issue of limited resources within the National Consumer Commission. Is this an issue? And just how much short are you as the National Consumer Commission to deal with cases such as this? You have more than 50 vehicles and more than 4,000 other complaints that are still probably would come. Are you adequately resourced? And if not, by how much? What would you need?
You see, this is quite a big matter, and I do believe that if things get to a point whereby it is a matter that really needs serious attention, we will speak to the relevant department, the Department of Trade and Industry, to request assistance. But you know, we, like any other business or any organization, we have an operational budget that we operate on, and it is, one can never say that it's enough. Things change in society, trends change in society, the number of complaints change all the time. It's never ever the same. The issues are never the same. So it is difficult for me to actually compound and say that we need another 50 of this or another 20 of that. But I do believe that if needs be, we can knock on the door of the Department of Trade and Industry to assist us insofar as budget is concerned, and assist us insofar as other resources is concerned, to ensure that we get the matter to rest and assist the consumer as best as we can.
Before I let you go, have you blocked Ms. Renisha's number?
No, I did not block Ms. Renisha's number. What I did was I referred her to the relevant people within the Consumer Commission. After that, she started to, what I can call, harass me all the time. She wanted to know information about Ford. I don't work for Ford. I don't have information about Ford. What I did simply was I stopped responding to her, because now there's looming litigation, and whatever I say could jeopardize their case or prejudice the matter in a positive or a negative way, and I did not want to get into that space. So I couldn't respond to her any further, because it was then beyond my mandate as a media person. It then became legal. So I referred it to the relevant people, and I can't speak for legal. I'm not a lawyer, so I had to refer the matter to the relevant people. She did not want to take the matter up with the relevant people, and she kept harassing me. And unfortunately, I could not speak further because it was something that was outside of my mandate as a media liaison officer.
And just lastly, I promise this is the last question. A lot of people are quite unsatisfied about what Ford did yesterday, or their explanation regarding the recall. A lot of people, when you troll along the media sites, your Twitter, your Facebook, a lot of people are talking about the issue of the refund and returning back the vehicles. Does the NCC hold the power to force Ford to do a complete recall and refund people?
You see, and I need to be very, very clear about this. What is going to happen is there's a number of cases that we received yesterday from the Jimmy family. Pardon. We received a number of cases from them, and we have to assess those cases. And what I can tell you is, only once we've assessed those cases, and let's say an investigation is recommended and we have findings from that investigation, and recommendations that recommend that yes, the following step has to be taken. People need to be refunded. People need to be certain parts need to be replaced, or whatever the remedy is. But the investigation will point us in the right direction, and that investigation will depend. The information or the findings of that and the recommendations will depend on what we find in terms of the merits of these cases that have been lodged with us. So I can't at this point in time say that yes, we can. But what I can tell you is, if it gets to a point whereby the recommendation says that there has to be recourse in the form of a refund or whatever the case might be, and that goes to court and it's endorsed by the tribunal or by a court, then yes, that is what's going to happen.
Mr. Hutton, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Well, Elvis, you have heard it from the spokesperson of the National Consumer Commission. As I said earlier on, there were pointing of fingers this morning at the briefing. The Jimmy family saying they got no joy from the National Consumer Commission. The National Consumer Commission spokesperson, as you've just heard, saying that he was doing what he is mandated to do as a spokesperson and within the recourse or the rebounds of his job. We will be speaking to the Jimmy family in our next crossing, which will be around 12 o'clock on SABC Channel 44 here. We will ask Ms. Renisha about her claims, about her being unsatisfied with the answers that the National Consumer Commission gave, and as well as the forward steps that have been taken. We'll find out from the Jimmy family about what exactly they'd like to see happen.
Thank you. That's our reporter Diabo Seto coming to us live. Now, yesterday, as you know, Ford announced that they will recall a number of vehicles on the road. They will take that step and making sure that people do not lose. In fact, that the other close to 50 of the vehicles that caught fire, that more of that doesn't happen. The president and the CEO of Ford South Africa, Jeff Nemeth, say that the investigation has enabled them to reduce the number from the initially stated 6,300 cars affected to 4,000, just over 4,000 now. Joining us from our Pretoria studios is Tezi Mabuza, the Deputy Commissioner from the National Consumer Commission. A very good morning to you and welcome, ma'am.
Good morning.
Now, as the Commission, are you happy with the way Ford handled this burning issue to date?
In this instance, under the circumstances, we are comfortable because actually we were all feeling under pressure as a commission that something had to be done and it had to be done quickly. The fact that we called them on Friday for a meeting and they were also amenable to the process that the recall should take place.
Now, as the Commission, are you going to make sure that this does happen and that consumers get the value for their money back from Ford?
We will ensure that this happens. The recall strategy of the NCC is to ensure that when cars are reported in this instance, we wanted to ascertain the number of the cars that will be involved and to ensure that in their strategy they would account for each and every car, starting from the manner in which they will communicate with the affected consumers until to the very last end, wherein we know that each and every car has been attended to.
Now, yesterday, during the press briefing, it emerged that the Commission only received no complaints at all from consumers, but it was the NCC employee who alerted the Commission about the Cougar saga. As the Commission, do you think that the public is aware about the work that the Commission does?
We assume that, yes, the public is aware. It could mean that maybe in this incident, they really didn't know how to go about it, because for most consumers, it could have been very traumatic, because it's one of those assets wherein you would find that it's not only, I would say it's a tripartite agreement, because now most of the consumers would buy their cars on credit. They will go and complain firstly maybe to their banks and then also to the supplier first, but omitting to come to the Commission to file their formal complaint.
Now, some consumers have threatened to sue. How is that process going to be facilitated, and will it not perhaps then drag out this matter even further?
In terms of our provisions in the Act, the supplier, the retailer, they are all, actually, especially the manufacturer, the supplier and the retailer, they are all liable for any damage that would be caused by goods that were of poor quality. So in this instance, the consumers, they are free to approach the court, because when you claim in terms of a civil claim. When you claim, you have to approach the court.
Now, Ms. Jesse, moving forward, as the Commission, we know that there's investigations currently underway, and we know that there's the legal action that's being threatened. But as a consumer, all consumers for that matter, when they buy a vehicle or when they buy any other product, what is the steps that they should take when they find themselves in a position like this?
Firstly is that as a consumer, you have to know that for any other product, especially for a vehicle, is a very complex, I would say that it's made of a number of complex components. In this instance, when mistakes like this happen, you would find that it's not actually the entire vehicle that is at stake. Like as you would recall on the issues of the airbags, where in the previous financial year, number of cars had to be recalled so that the airbags would be replaced. But in this instance, the fact is that there is a threat in terms of the loss of life and then also further damage to other properties of other consumers as well. It actually presented a different challenge altogether. But what we are looking forward to in future is that this incidents, we don't want it to happen. And if something like this happen quickly, we would expect that consumers should alert us quickly. They should ensure that when they file a complaint with the supplier, they also alert us, or in this instance as well, as consumers, go to your nearest, go to your ombuds, let them know exactly what is happening so that this matter can be taken care of as quick as possible. But it is very, really difficult for any consumer to foresee, or even now, even for the commissioner, to foresee that this incident, though we are recalling that 2012 and the 2014 models, that maybe in future it might not happen again, because this is a very complex component, as we are saying.
Now, last year, I just want to touch on this briefly. The Samsung Note 7 was placed on a global airline ban when it mysteriously also caught fire. Now, you had some deliberations with Samsung. What were some of the outcomes of that deliberations and the resolutions that were taken?
With Samsung, because it was a smaller component, what we did with Samsung, it was simply to, because now it was reported all over, and then all that we did is to call Samsung and say to them, tell us how many components have been shipped to South Africa, what is it that you are going to do? And then they reacted swiftly, because in this instance, they could tell us exactly how many components were there. They contacted the consumers. Those cell phones were replaced. And because now Samsung in this instance acted swiftly, they even added up, sweetened the deal, and they gave something back to the consumers to make sure that actually they protect their brand and that consumers remain loyal to them.
So in the end, do you think that Ford Cougar owners will be so lucky that they probably will get their money back?
In this instance, the responsibility of Ford is to restore the value of that product. In this instance, they can do that by three ways. First, they have to repair, they have to replace, and if that fails, they have to refund. And then in this instance, all these matters will be treated on merit, depending on how far, or maybe what is the harm to the consumer.
So repair, replace, or refund, and that is the final word there.
Yes, that is what it would be. That would be expected. As the Commission would expect that from Ford. They have to repair, replace. Wherein there has been loss, there has to be a refund.
Tezi Mabuza, thank you so much for your time and joining us, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
That was Tezi Mabuza, the Deputy Commissioner from the National Consumer Commission. Ford has got a triple challenge, the 3 Ps. Well, you heard it here, right here. In fact, all the 3 Rs. Repair, replace, or refund. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back after that.
Give me that paperwork.
Where
I don't know what's going on. Suddenly I'm locked up.
This is not fair, Santa Basezan. Not fair.
Ukuputse rent ka 200. Hape se kupula ka 200. Uri ngwana, o i-1. 150, 150 plus koloi. Leon, tlamehile in another one, 150.
I'm just the one to lock you out.
Yes,
I
you
have
just
the
want to
keys.
lock me then out.
You are starting gangsterism.
No! No!
Information-hungry viewers stay with SABC News, as issues on the West are different from issues on the East or here in Johannesburg. So it is not surprising that people who follow the news know that there are two things for sure: that anything can happen, and SABC News will tell you when it does. Because we keep the nation fully informed. We are SABC News.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom Sports, and my name is Kendall Makhamati. We've got lots to cover in this hour. And first up, we talk about AFCON, where Ivory Coast got their Africa Cup of Nations title defense after a slow start, after playing to a goalless draw against Togo at Stade d'Oyem in the north of Gabon. It was truly an inauspicious start, as it was the first goalless match in this year's AFCON so far.
Day 3 of the 2017 Africa Cup of Nations saw Ivory Coast begin their title defense against the West African rivals, Togo. Despite missing the likes of Didier Drogba and Yaya Toure for this year's tournament, the Ivorians came into the contest confident of 3 points. Both the teams have met 3 times in this competition. 2 of those games ended in a draw, while the recent fixture in 2013 produced a 2-1 win for Ivory Coast. However, the game got off to a subdued start, with neither team managing to assert their dominance early on. The first real chance of the contest went to Ivory Coast, Solomon Kalou, in the thick of things in an attempt to make things happen for the defending champions. Togo, who have been in the back foot for much part of the opening exchanges, had a good opportunity to open the scoring in the 28th minutes, only to be denied by the brilliance of Ivory Coast goalkeeper. Despite both the teams' attempts to open the scoring at the interval, there was little to separate the two teams on the scoreboard. Similar to the first half, the second 45 minutes got off to a subdued start, with both the teams struggling to find their rhythm going forward. Wilfred Zaha, who switched his international allegiance from England ahead of the tournament, came close to opening the scoring for the Ivorians 13 minutes into the second half. Scoreless, however, that's how things remained after the final whistle. Joseph Mohale, SABC News.
Now, staying with AFCON, the DR Congo enjoyed top spot in Group C after beating Morocco 1-0 in their eventful AFCON 2017 game in Gabon. The Atlas Lions almost opened the scoring in the second minute. This as midfielder Mbaka Boussafa rattled the crossbar.
Morocco pushed forward, lovely initial touch to try and serve up a shot at the edge of the box. Then it eventually comes in and shakes the bar.
Now, Morocco started off the better of the two sides once again in the second half, but it was the DRC who found the back of the net against the run of play.
Oh, it's come off the post and smashed home. Beautifully done in the reaction to find the opener.
Morocco continued to press forward in search of an equalizer, but were denied by the keeper. Eventually, it was DR Congo's Lomalisa Mutambala who was shown a second yellow with less than 10 minutes to go.
He got to the ball, but the problem here is he would have gotten to Fajir as well. Now, he was already on a yellow, so he picks up another second yellow card. Marching orders, 10 minutes to go, and things change dramatically.
Morocco were denied an equalizer in the closing minutes when DR Congo goalkeeper Lei Matampi made a brilliant stop at point-blank range to block Youssef Al Arabi's header. Now to tennis, where the 22-times women's singles Grand Slam winner Serena Williams is through to the second round of the Australian Open tennis tournament in Melbourne after beating Switzerland's Belinda Bencic 6-4 and 6-3. Williams is ranked second at the tournament, and in 66 Grand Slam tournaments, she has lost only once in the opening round.
First round opponents for the top seeds are supposed to be less of a challenge, but Bencic was as high as number 7 in the world last year. After that, an injury-plagued season saw a drop down the rankings. Williams herself has suffered from injuries since last year's US Open, but apart from some rustiness in the middle of the match, she won with relative ease.
It seemed to be one-way traffic until that little flourish at the end for the 19-year-old gave her some hope.
In the men's singles, number 9 seed, Spain's Rafael Nadal also comfortably advanced to the second round. He suffered from a wrist injury last year, which also saw him drop down the rankings. But he looked fit in beating Germany's Florian Mayer 6-3, 6-4 and 6-4.
Doing the damage.
Canadian Milos Raonic, seeded third at the tournament, scored a 6-3, 6-4, 6-2 victory over Germany's Dustin Brown to move into the second round. The 26-year-old Canadian, a semi-finalist last year, hit 18 aces and 46 winners and will next face Luxembourg's Jules Muller. Harry Wolfire, SABC News.
Now, Valtteri Bottas of Finland has been announced as the replacement for retired Formula One world champion Nico Rosberg at Mercedes. Talking at the factory after signing a contract alongside team boss Toto Wolff, Bottas, who said he's been made to feel welcome by his new team, promised to push new teammate and triple world champion Britain Lewis Hamilton as hard as possible. In the merry-go-round, young Pascal Wehrlein, who was the Mercedes reserve driver, will now race for Ferrari-powered Sauber. And after just 49 days since his much-publicized retirement, Felipe Massa rejoins Williams to replace the departed Finn. Here's Bottas.
Well, I've had a really warm welcome so far. You know, there's obviously so many more people I'm still getting to know, learning new names, new faces. But the initial feeling is great, Just at the moment, I'm just already focusing for the first race, and I can't wait to start a proper work with the team and getting to know everyone. But it is an impressive team with an impressive history in Formula One, especially the last few years. So it's great to be here. I'm prepared to work really hard. I'm still young and fast, and obviously Lewis is going to be a great reference. He's many-time world champion, and everyone knows exactly how good he is. So it's going to be great pairing with Lewis, being his teammate, and also for me to compare to him. But first of all, for us to work together and push the team forward. I'm still getting to know him better. But if you think about the driving side and working as a team, I see that it can be very good. I think he obviously has more experience than me, but I see us as a good pair for the team. I'm sure we can work well together, share a lot of things, and hopefully push each other forward. And that way, it's very good for the team. So it is team sport. We are here together as a pair of drivers in this team, and that's how it goes.
Now, having never ever lost to a teammate, but also having never won a championship, it should make for a very interesting season this year in the Silver Arrows garage. All this and more we've got for you in terms of what's happening in sports tomorrow. But for now, we're done. Thanks very much for having joined us. You've been watching Newsroom. My name is Kendall Makamate. So until tomorrow, this is Instant.